Chapter 141. Prince Cheng. The military report says that Walla's army is coming to the capital. Baiyang Pass is in an emergency. If we don't do anything about it, Zijing Pass and Juyong Pass will be in danger. At that time, Walla's army will come to the capital. Wang Ji, the Minister of Personnel, as one of the old officials, stood out bravely and told Zhu Qiyu about the danger of the current situation. Then what should we do? Zhu Qiyu, who had never been in charge of the court, was at a loss. Prince Yu, Minister Wang, we should be discussing the whereabouts of His Majesty and whether he will be able to return. Hu Xiao, the Minister of the Ministry of Rites, stepped forward with his ceremonial tablet in hand and spoke with a worried expression. A snake can't do without a head. No one could make the final decision. No one could think of the same thing. Minister Hu is right. The most important thing now is to find out where His Majesty is and where the other officials are. Jin Lian, the Minister of Justice, and Shi Pu, the Minister of Works, both held their tablets and raised their heads high to express their thoughts. Well, if that's the case, go and find out where His Majesty is. Zhu Qiyu, Prince Cheng, nodded in agreement. If he knew that Zhu Qizhen was still alive, he would find a way to bring him back to preside over the situation. If he was gone, Zhu Qiyu didn't think too much about it for now. The court meeting ended in such a hurry that they did not manage to come to a conclusion. The spies of the Eastern Palace Guards and the Brocade Guards began to move. However, facing the Walla's army on the battlefield, it was not possible to find out the real information in a short time. Zhu Qiyu returned to the Nangong Palace with a worried look. The Nangong Palace was a side hall in the palace. Because it was only in a corner of the palace, few people came here. When Zhu Qizhen had left, he had arranged for his younger brother to stay here as a warning. Because the crown prince was only 2 years old and had just been established, he couldn't supervise the country. Therefore, Zhu Qiyu was asked to stay here, but it was just to let him stand there as a puppet. It was impossible for him to have any power or have any thoughts about the imperial power. The arrangement of the remote Nangong Palace was a warning to Zhu Qiyu that she had to grasp her own position and not overstep her authority. Zhu Qiyu did not have any thoughts about being assigned to Nangong's place. He was very clear about his own position, but that was based on Zhu Qizhen's triumphant return. Naturally, he had to return to his seat. But now, Zhu Qiyu's mood was very complicated. She walked back to the Nangong Palace, where she was temporarily staying. She happened to see a few eunuchs not far away. They seemed to be talking about her and pointing at something. For a moment, anger rose in his heart. This was because he had always been the eunuch in charge of the ceremony directorate. Moreover, he was the first eunuch and enjoyed a very high position. It was just that Wang Zhen was in the limelight for a while, so no one paid attention to him. Jin Ying's sudden appearance at this time, and it looked like he was standing up for Zhu Qiyu. The meaning behind this was worth pondering. Zhu Qiyu's impression of Jin Ying was quite good. Not for anything else, but because this person was one of the few people who treated him with respect. Perhaps it was because they were both oppressed, or perhaps it was because they had the same experience and knew what hibernation meant, so naturally, there were too many similarities. Many thanks, Eunuch Jin. Zhu Qiyu smiled and spoke to Jin Ying with a smile in his eyes. At the same time, he bowed slightly to express his gratitude. Aya, you can't do that. Yu Wang has a precious body and is in charge of court affairs. How can you be so polite to a eunuch like me? Jin Ying's face was filled with fear and trepidation. His head was extremely low, as if he was about to make intimate contact with the ground with his knees. At the mention of being in charge of court affairs, Zhu Qiyu's expression turned bitter. His starry eyes were filled with power as he said, "What? Is Eunuch Jin also here to make fun of my incompetence in court?" Jin Ying, who was said to be knowledgeable, could not be more familiar with this feeling. After all, he had experienced 4 emperors. But at this time, he still pretended to be very afraid and shook his head violently. "Your Highness Yu Wang, please forgive me. This subject does not have such thoughts. On the contrary, this subject believes that Yu Wang was just born at the wrong time. Otherwise, with your great wisdom, it would not be difficult for you to become a wise ruler." "Shoo! Zhu Qiu was really frightened by Jin Ying's words. He looked around nervously. Eunuch Jin, don't harm this prince. Your Highness Yu Wang, don't worry. No matter what, this subject has been in the palace for so many years and has some power of my own. There is no third person within 100 steps of this place. You can rest assured. Jin Ying's face was full of confidence. This time he had come to find Zhu Qiu, taking a certain risk. He had also come to express his loyalty and surrender. Since that was the case, how could he not make the necessary preparations? Let's go into the hall and talk. Zhu Qiu knew that if Jin Ying dared to say this, it must have been arranged. After all, once Zhu Qizhen found out that he had been in close contact with eunuchs in private, he would be suspected. He did not know what would happen to him. But Jin Ying regarded himself as a subject, so his intentions were clear. Jin Ying had been in the palace for so many years, so it was impossible for him not to know something that even Zhu Qiu himself knew. And since he still dared to come, he must have something to say to him. At that moment, he strode into the hall with a considerate look. Jin Ying followed half a step behind him. He followed closely behind with his head lowered. But if he was willing to raise his head at this moment, he would be able to see a very determined expression on his face. It was determination, because this time, Jin Ying had come to persuade Zhu Qiu to take the throne. Regardless of whether Zhu Qizhen was alive or not, and whether he could return to the palace, in Jin Ying's eyes, he was already a useless person. The change of imperial power had always been a matter of swords and blades. Since you dared to leave the palace, you should be prepared for a turtle dove to take over your nest. If you wanted to blame someone, you could only blame Zhu Qizhen for trusting and doting on Wang Jin too much. Since you doted on someone else and did not give yourself a way out, don't blame him for looking for another way. Then, in the hall of the Nangong Palace, Zhu Qiu and Jin Ying chatted for a long time. No one knew what they talked about, but the various events that followed were enough to deduce what they had said and what they had planned. The Hu residence. After Hu Xiao and Hu Zhongning returned to the residence from court, they gave strict orders that no one was to leave the residence without their permission. Even the maids in charge of buying groceries and cooking in the residence had to set a time limit. When they went out, they had to bring a few more servants with them. With the situation at court in chaos, no one knew what would happen next. Based on Hu Zhao's many years of experience as an official, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. First, they would wait and see. Then, they would place heavy bets. This was a wise move. Because of this order, the atmosphere in the entire Hu residence became very tense and oppressive. In Hu Yan's room in the backyard, she was pacing back and forth anxiously. After a while, the servant girl, Xiao Qing, stumbled into the room with an anxious look on her face. "Little Qing, what did you find out? Is there any news of him?" When she saw her personal servant girl, Hu Yan stepped forward and grabbed her hands. Her face was full of anxiety and worry. Chapter 142. Me, Young Mississippi. The main, side, and back doors of the estate have all been closed. Without master's orders, no one is allowed to leave. Little Qing panted as she recounted what she had seen to Hu Yan. When she heard that all the doors of the estate had been closed, Hu Yan had a bad premonition. If nothing major had happened, such a change wouldn't have occurred. Her expression couldn't help but change slightly. When she looked at little Qing, there was a hint of anxiousness. "I asked you to gather information. What's the result?" "This?" Little Qing shook her head. "I couldn't leave the estate, so I couldn't get any more information. However, when I asked Lieutenant Sun Chuang, he said that it seemed that the front lines had been defeated." "Defeated? Seems?" Hu Yan's heart skipped a beat. "Has this information been confirmed?" As she spoke, she tightened her grip on little Qing's wrist. "Young miss, you also know that with Sun Chuang's status, what he knows is limited. Young miss, hurry up and let go. You're hurting me." Little Qing's eyes were hazy with tears. Hu Yan's grip had truly hurt her. Hu Yan mechanically released her grip and sat back down in her chair. Her eyes were empty as she said, "He'll be fine, he'll be fine." Quite a few people in the capital were reacting in the same way as Hu Yan. This was especially true for the hundreds of family members of the officials who had accompanied the army. They could vaguely sense that something was wrong. Even though there was still no confirmation, the atmosphere had already turned icy cold. As a result, the business of the immortal abode and the realm beyond heaven began to wane. In the past, the seats had always been in short supply, but now they had lost at least 30% of their customers. They no longer had to wait in line to spend money. 5 days later, amidst this oppressive atmosphere, a group of soldiers arrived at the gates of the capital. The leader had a strange appearance. He had a square face, a tall stature, and a knee-length beard. He was skilled in horseback riding and archery, and a large saber hung beside his sturdy horse. He exuded a fierce killing intent. However, at this moment, there wasn't the slightest bit of killing intent in his eyes. There was only anxiety. He was Datong Prefecture's Governor Shi Heng. Shi Heng, Marquis Xining Song Ing, Wu Jin Bo Zhu Mian and the others fought against the Walla cavalry at Yanghaku. After the deaths of Song and Zhu, he had returned alone. Along the way, he had recruited soldiers and brought back several hundred cavalry. This time, he had returned to the capital to atone for his crimes by performing meritorious deeds. Shi Heng came back with the latest news from the front line. When Zhu Qiyu, the imperial tutor prince, found out about this, he immediately summoned all the fourth rank and above officials in the capital to the palace for a discussion. In the imperial court, Shi Heng knelt before Zhu Qiyu and recounted in detail what he had experienced and what he had seen. After he finished speaking, he continued to kowtow to the ground. As he kowtowed, he said, "Your humble servant is incompetent. At this moment, Shi Heng was acting like a loyal and brave general. Instead of saying that he was repenting, it was better to say that he was showing off his achievements. General Shi, please rise. This prince wants to ask you, how is the emperor? How are the other officials?" Zhu Qiyu, the imperial tutor prince, asked anxiously. However, others did not know that there was a ball of fire burning in his chest at this moment. "Your Highness Imperial Tutor Prince, the Emperor has ascended to heaven." Shi Heng slowly raised his head and blinked his eyes hard. But no matter how one looked at him, he did not look like he was about to cry. His expression was still vivid, giving people the feeling that he was very sad and in pain. "What?" Zhu Qiyu's body trembled when he heard this. He almost slipped off his chair. Fortunately, Jin Ing, who was standing to the side, helped him in time, so he did not make a fool of himself. At this moment, the other officials were also shocked. Some of the timid ones even knelt on the ground and began to cry. There were also some officials who could not believe Shi Heng's words. After all, according to the battle report, the Vola cavalry and infantry only had 60 to 70,000 soldiers. However, the Great Ming Empire had sent an army of 500,000 soldiers, including many elite troops. How could they be defeated? Moreover, they were defeated so thoroughly that even the lives of the emperor and hundreds of officials were lost. "Governor Shi, did you see the death of the emperor and the officials with your own eyes?" Among the officials, Wang Ji, the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, was relatively calm. He really could not understand how they could have been defeated so miserably when they had outnumbered the enemy by 7 to 8 times. "No, this official did not see the death of the emperor and the officials with my own eyes. But because of Wang Zhen's careless command, the army did not care about each other. The general did not know the soldiers, and the soldiers did not know the general. In addition, there was a lack of water and food, and the morale was low. When faced with the elite cavalry of the Walla, they fled or were injured. It was chaos. This official did not know where the emperor and the officials were at that time. But later, when we fought with a small number of the Walla cavalry, I learned the news from the captives. This official did not dare to delay any longer, so I killed my way out with my men." Shi Heng kept beautifying himself as he spoke. He gave people the impression that he had given up on fighting the enemy in order to bring back news. But in reality, he had heard this news from some of the great Ming dynasty's deserters who understood the Walla language. "Impudent! How can you insult my father like this?" Just as Shi Heng finished speaking, 3 people walked out from the crowd. They were the commander of the brocade guards, Ma Shun, primary third rank. The commander of the brocade guards, Wang Shan, secondary third rank, and the commander of the brocade guards, Wang Lin, primary fourth rank. When the two of them heard that Shi Hong had put all the blame on Wang Zhen, how could they let it go? One of them was Wang Zhen's confidant, and the other was Wang Zhen's nephew. They were deeply indebted to Wang Zhen and would not allow anyone to speak ill of Wang Zhen. As soon as the two of them jumped out, Jining, who was standing next to the throne, raised his eyebrows. He had been waiting for this moment for far too long. It was precisely because of these people that his authority had been completely stripped away. Now that he finally had a chance to take revenge and eliminate his dissidents, how could he let go of such an opportunity? He had even summoned officials of the fourth rank and above to discuss this matter precisely to lure out Wang Zhen's confidence. If Yang Qindong were here, he would definitely be suspicious. History had already begun to deviate from its original course. In reality, because of his appearance, many things had already changed. It was precisely because of the establishment of the realm beyond heaven and the immortal abode that Wang Zhen was able to earn money so quickly that he found it difficult to put anyone aside from the emperor. This made Jining even more dissatisfied with him than in history. The three of them stepped out at the same time and glared at Shi Hong, giving him a fright. I'm only speaking the truth. What do you want to do? What do we want to do? Scoundrels like you who spread false information should be put to death. Men, drag him away and behead him. Ma Shun's gaze was as sharp as a sword as he stared at Shi Hong. He looked like he wouldn't give up until he had skinned him alive. As soon as he spoke, 6 tall, burly embroidered uniform guards walked in. They were dressed in flying robes. As soon as the embroidered uniform guards appeared, the atmosphere in the imperial court froze. The expressions of all the officials changed greatly. It was clear that they had all suffered at the hands of these people before. They were terrified from the bottom of their hearts. At this moment, no one noticed that the Mastiff Prince, Zhu Qiyu, and Jining, the eunuch of the ceremony directorate, were exchanging glances. It was clear that they had already known that something like this was going to happen. Zhu Qiyu nodded lightly, as if in tacit agreement. Jining took a step forward, and his voice suddenly grew louder. Come, why aren't you arresting these 3 traitors for disrupting the imperial court? Behead them as punishment. Jining suddenly stood up and said that she wanted to kill 3 people instead of 1. For a moment, the emperor and his subjects were stunned. Even Ma Shun and the other 2 had a look of surprise in their eyes. They could not understand how Jining could make a mistake in such a situation. They didn't understand earlier because the 6 embroidered uniform guards hadn't made a move yet. But when the 6 of them stepped forward and subdued Ma Shun, Wang Shan, and Wang Lin, they finally understood what was going on. Jining, you traitor, what are you trying to do? Let me go immediately, or I'll make sure you're beheaded. Being subdued by 2 extremely strong embroidered uniform guards, Ma Shun resisted a few times without any success, so he started cursing loudly. Jining, who had been prepared for this, had a cold expression. He said in a disdainful tone, "You're about to die, but you're still so arrogant. Come, drag him away and behead him." When the 6 strong embroidered uniform guards heard this, they dragged Ma Shun and the other 2 out of the imperial court. Not long after, 3 shouts came from outside. Needless to say, Ma Shun and the other 2 had been beheaded. Their most loyal lackeys had been killed. The officials were all trembling with fear, especially those who had previously sided with Wang Zhen. They were so nervous that they broke out in cold sweat. They didn't know if Jining, who seemed to be in control of the imperial court, would suddenly attack them. Killing people was to establish authority and also to intimidate. Now it seemed that the effect was quite good. Jining sighed softly in his heart. "Don't blame me. You forced me to do this." After giving himself an explanation, he suddenly turned and knelt down in front of Zhu Qiyu, the Duke of Yen. "Your Highness, the Duke of Yen, now that the Ying sect is in trouble, the Great Ming is in danger. Please ascend the throne, preside over the situation, and lead the Great Ming back to glory." When Jining knelt down, the entire imperial court fell silent. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Obviously, this was something that no one had foreseen or prepared for. But this silence only lasted for a moment. Shiheng suddenly pounded his head on the ground and shouted, "This official requests the Duke of Yen to ascend the throne and establish the empire." With Shiheng taking the lead, the officials who reacted quickly knelt down one by one and begged the Duke of Yen, Zhu Qiyu, to ascend the throne and become the emperor. Shiheng had said that the Ying sect, Zhu Qizhen, had already died on the battlefield. Even so, someone had to be the emperor. Now it seemed that with the status of regent, the younger brother of the emperor, and the bloodline of the Zhu family, it was perfectly justified for him to inherit the empire. Chapter 143. With the situation settled, all the officials knelt on the ground and cheered. Since ancient times, there was a saying that there were 3 requests. Zhu Qiyu immediately rejected them. After that, the officials invited him, rejected him, and invited him a 3rd time. Only then was the matter settled. Immediately, everyone and Zhu Qiyu went to see the Empress Dowager to go through the final approval process. That day, Zhu Qiyu became the emperor. Because the war was imminent, the situation was urgent. The officials knelt on the ground and recognized Zhu Qiyu as the emperor. His title was Daizong, and his name was Jingtai. He made Yingzong's son, Zhu Jianxin, later Xianzong, the crown prince. This important imperial edict was passed down by Jining. Now, Jining had become a powerful official like Wang Zhen during Yingzong's time. Jining also received the favor of Empress Dowager's son and the new emperor. Whether it was Wang Zhen or Jining, this was the result of the system and environment. The Ming dynasty was an unprecedentedly powerful dynasty. This was why the emperor dared to give power to the eunuchs. Although the eunuchs of the Ming dynasty had so much power, when the emperor really wanted to punish them, he only needed to write an imperial edict and these eunuchs would be doomed eternally. Lu Jin and Wei Zhongxian both ended up like this. Thus, the emperor was not worried about the eunuchs being disloyal. Secondly, the emperor had no choice but to use the eunuchs. The Ming dynasty officials were very powerful. At their peak, they dared to publicly criticize the emperor. Although the emperor was the son of heaven and had unparalleled power. But in front of all the officials, he was all alone. In order to break the unity of the officials, the emperor could only use the eunuchs to restrict the power of the officials. Although the eunuchs were mostly dark, they all knew that the only thing they could rely on was the emperor. Thus, they were all loyal. Thus, to the emperor, the eunuchs were more reliable than the officials. Now that Jining had taken the initiative, she should have immediately attacked Wang Zhen's faction. However, this was not the result of a peaceful development. It was the result of a crisis. At this time, the military report said that Walla's army was approaching. If the palace was in chaos now, it would be bad for the overall situation. In order to give Emperor Jing and Zhu Qiyu a good impression, Jining didn't attack Wang Zhenyu's supporters. Instead, she began to unite the majority of the people and prepared to fight the enemy together. It was because of his generosity that many eunuchs took the initiative to defect and change their allegiance. Even those who were loyal to Wang Zhen became much more well-behaved and hid among the crowd. For example, Wang Zhen's trusted eunuch of the imperial horse supervisor, Chen Guan, had become an old dog that didn't bite. He had become very obedient. Whenever Jining gave an order, he would completely obey. There wasn't the slightest bit of difference. There were also eunuchs Chao Jixiang, Gao Rang, Mao Mu, and Chen Sungbao, the Imperial Horse Directorate's chief eunuch, who were all very low-key. Don't cause trouble, and do your best to complete the tasks assigned to you. However, everyone could see that these people were still waiting to see the situation. They were waiting for the arrival of Tile's army before making a final decision. In this regard, Jining didn't have any better ideas. Zhu Qiyu was willing to delegate power to her, but not without a bottom line. If he wanted to unify the group of eunuchs, which even Wang Zhen hadn't been able to do, she was afraid that the first unlucky one would be her. It was still the same saying, "I can use you, but I also have to be wary of you." This was the basic attitude of the emperor towards eunuchs. Jining became the eunuch in charge of power and was promoted to chief eunuch of the ceremony directorate by Zhu Qiu. For a time, she held great power. Her fangs were unfurled. The group of eunuchs wasn't easy to move. They were all under the emperor's nose. If there was any wind blowing, it would be very difficult to hide. Thus, she began to move against the officials. She arranged for Lu Gue, who had just been promoted to commander of the Brocade Guard, to walk through the homes of the officials, looking for their weaknesses and problems to threaten. Lu Gue brought the new commander of the Brocade Guard, Han Ji, to visit the important officials one by one. The Minister of Works, Shi Pu, had originally gotten his position from Wang Jin. After Wang Zhan fell from power, he used Lu Gue to bribe Jining to keep his position. Jinying's family also asked for stone, grass, and other materials to build a private room for Jining, and so on from the officials of the Military Preparation Office and internal envoy Yi Jingrong. Many of the important officials were threatened because of this. The lighter ones were given a sum of money to settle the matter. There were even some who were directly sent to prison. As the residents of the Minister of Rights, Hu Mang, the Hu Manor also suffered a lot from Lu Gue and Han Ji. Not only did they give a large sum of money, Hu Chongning was also ordered to reflect on his mistakes at home on the grounds that he was suspended from his duties. Jining had made such a big move that some of the officials who liked to curry favor could no longer remain calm. They all thought of ways to establish a relationship with her. Among them was the head of the Hanlin Academy, Wang Go, who was also Yang Duo's husband. Wang Go had given all of his family's gold and silver to the new commander of the Brocade Guard, Han Ji. As a result, he had been promoted from the original 9th rank to the 7th rank editor. Not only had he been promoted, but he had also taken the position of his former superior, Wang Si. Although Wang Si's grandfather, the Minister of Appointments, Wang Ji, had also been threatened, he had only given money to ensure his safety and had not expressed his loyalty to Jining. His position was not easy to move, but his family members, such as his grandson Wang Si, had been removed from their positions and thrown back home. Originally, when they were in the Hanlin Academy, because Wang Si and Yang Chendong had a good personal relationship, he had always suppressed Wang Go and made him suffer. Now, not only had he been promoted, he had also removed the mountain above his head. Next, the first thing Wang Go, who was proud of his position in the government, did was find Yang Duo. He said that he had taken a fancy to the servant girl Xiao Chui and wanted her to warm his room. Xiao Chui was one of the 10 servant girls that Yang Chendong had given to Yang Duo. She was quite beautiful, and Wang Go had also coveted her for a long time. However, she had been sent by Yang Chendong. Even if he had the intention, he did not have the courage. However, now that he had heard that Yang Chendong and Ingzong had died on the battlefield together, he no longer had anything to restrain himself from. Thus, he wanted to show off his power as a man. Yang Duo naturally rejected Wang Go's request. Xiao Chui also threatened to kill herself, saying that if Wang Go touched a single finger of hers, she would die in front of him. If that really happened, it would be inevitable that there would be endless trouble. Wang Go knew that he could not do it. In a fit of anger, he decided to divorce his wife and divorce Yang Duo. At the same time, he married a distant sister of Han Ji as his first wife. During this period of time, because of his 6th brother Yang Chendong, Wang Go's attitude towards Yang Duo had changed. As a woman, and a married woman at that, it was fine if she wanted to live a good life. However, she did not expect that misfortune would descend so quickly. Before she could react, the divorce paper was in front of her. In ancient times, many women divorced their husbands because of emotional discord or other reasons. If it was an amicable divorce, it proved that it was not a woman's problem. Naturally, it would be much easier for the woman to find another man. However, if she was divorced, it was equivalent to carrying a bad reputation for the rest of her life. It would be difficult for her to find a suitable husband. Even if she was married, she would often be looked down upon by her husband's family because of this matter. Accompanied by 10 maids, Yang Duo left the Wang family. She did not even look back because this was the place where she felt sad. After leaving the Wang family, Yang Duo was considered homeless. In the end, she decided to go to the Yang family village. In the village, when she saw Qiao Yin and Madame Shui, who were already waiting there, she burst into tears. The three women quickly hugged each other and cried together. The news of Yingzong and the officials' deaths naturally spread to the Yang family village. Qiao Yin and Madame Shui did not know how many times they had cried because of this. Yang Si and Yang Lu, who stayed at home, tried to persuade them, saying that no matter who was in trouble, the young master would be fine. However, this was only taken as comforting words. No one believed them. Even if others did not believe them, Yang Si and Yang Lu were not discouraged. Instead, they met up with the deputy chief of the security bureau, Yang San, who had been active in the capital. After a discussion, the three of them decided that before the young master returned, they had to protect the Yang family village and not allow anyone to cause trouble here. As for Yang Qindong's safety, the three of them did not worry too much about it. No one knew more about the sixth young master's background than they did. Even in the midst of chaos, it was really difficult to hurt the sixth young master with just Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, Yang Wu, the first guard, and the 100 soldiers of the Cold Vanguard led by Xiao Feng. It was because they firmly believed that Yang Qindong would be fine. The confidence of the three of them soared, and they secretly strengthened the security of the Yang family village. They even decided that if anyone dared to cause trouble here, they would be killed. At the same time, the three of them also decided to temporarily give up on the business of heaven beyond heaven and the immortal abode. They would invite all the important figures in the young master's eyes back to the Yang family village for protection. It was precisely this appropriate action that left some people disappointed, but it also left some people stamping with rage. The one who was stamping with rage was a member of the Yang family. It was Yang Qindong's second brother, Yang Rang. Just like how Wang Go had donated all his money to curry favor with Jining, Yang Rang had chosen to give his sixth brother's businesses, the immortal abode and heaven beyond heaven, to Jining. For this reason, he first went to the palace and handed over a letter of greeting, stating his intentions. Jining was currently in a position of great power. She had to wait on Zhu Qiu and curry his favor, and she also had to get rid of those who disobeyed her and deal with those who disobeyed her. He was just a trifling sixth-rank official. Wanting to see him was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. But when the eunuchs relayed Yang Rang's words, Jining was tempted. The immortal abode and heaven beyond heaven were reputed to be the most profitable businesses in the capital. There were even rumors that the great Ming dynasty's tax revenue couldn't compare to the amount of money earned from these two businesses. Jinying's eyes had long since turned red with envy. This was because Yang Qindong and Wang Zhen were on good terms. Even if she wanted to get her hands on them, she couldn't find the opportunity. Now, Yang Qindong's second brother wanted to give these two businesses to her. This was like a meat pie falling from the sky. Jining immediately summoned Yang Rang in the midst of her busy schedule. When Yang Rang saw Jining, he immediately knelt, looking like a servant meeting his master. It seemed like he wanted nothing more than to be Jinying's dog. Chapter 144. Jining was naturally overjoyed by this attitude. After all, this person was the son of Yang Rong of the Three Yangs. Him treating him with such respect was definitely a sign of respect. He immediately put on a courteous front and helped Yang Rang to his feet. Afterwards, the host and guest sat together and chatted happily. Yang Rang's attitude was resolute. He had to give the realm beyond heaven and the immortal abode to Jining. In response, Jining expressed an appropriate amount of magnanimity. He agreed to take over these two properties, but he wouldn't treat Yang Rang unfairly. He said that he would give him 1/10 of the profits and let him manage them. All he needed to do was ensure the safety of the facilities. Yang Rang was overjoyed by the fact that this negotiation was not going to be taken seriously. After all, 1/10 of the profits was still a lot of money. At that moment, the two of them hit it off. In order to make Yang Rang's operation even smoother, Jining even transferred 2 small banners of the embroidered uniform guards for him to use. Not only that, she also sent her servant, Zhao Xian, to cooperate with him. They had to get the deeds for these 2 places as soon as possible. Before the mission began, Yang Rang's official position was directly promoted from the 6th-rank official of the Ministry of Rights to the 4th-rank official of the Zhan Department. Although this position didn't have much authority, Jining clearly stated that he could continue to be promoted after taking over the realm beyond heaven and the immortal abode. He was suddenly promoted from rank 6 to rank 4. This was a qualitative change. Yang Rang's eyes were filled with hope. He even believed that he would have to rely on himself to develop the Yang clan. As for whether or not he'd gotten everything because he'd thrown in his lot with the eunuchs, once he succeeded, who would care about asking so many questions? After leaving the imperial palace, the group of 20 headed straight for the immortal abode. However, when they came here excitedly, they were faced with a closed door. Let's go take a look at the realm beyond heaven. Yang Rang frowned. Everyone went to the neighboring heavens beyond, but it was the same here. It was empty. They could even see the emptiness of the interior through the transparent glass. There were no goods left. Not even a guard was left behind. This gave Yang Rang a bad feeling. Although news of Ing Zong's defeat had already reached the capital, the new emperor had already ascended to the throne. There weren't any businesses that had closed because of this. Perhaps he had been affected a little, but it wasn't to the extent of not doing it anymore. What's going on? Zhao Xian, Jin Ying's servant, was also agitated by the scene in front of him and asked angrily. Yang Rang hurriedly bowed and revealed a flattering smile. It's fine, it's fine. They must be too cowardly and moved all the goods back to the Yang Qindong manor. We'll go there now. Don't worry, I'm Yang Qindong's second brother and the owner of that place. No one will dare to stop me. That better be the case. Zhao Xian snorted. Even without Zhao Xian saying anything, Yang Rang knew the importance of this matter. Jining was interested in the benefits that the immortal abode and the heavens beyond heaven could bring her, not these two properties. Without the goods and services, these two places were not worth much. Yang Rang's forehead was already covered in cold sweat as he hurriedly led the group of people towards the Yang manor. In the Yang manor, it was as if they were facing a great enemy. Dao Xiao, who had been hiding in the shadows, had already led a small team of 10 people to the open and found a suitable location outside the manor. They were ready to destroy the enemy. In the manor, Yang Si and Yang Lu each held a 95 style sword and kept wiping it and checking their equipment. They knew that in the chaos and with the young master not around, there would definitely be someone who had designs on the Yang manor. However, they did not know who it was. As they waited, a horse carriage entered Dao Zhao's line of sight. Who are you? Stop the carriage. The Yang manor is in front. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. Dao Xiao jumped out from the bushes by the road and stood in the middle of the road. This was because it was only a horse carriage and he could not see any danger. Otherwise, he would not have appeared so casually. Stop! The coachman shouted and stopped the carriage. Then, the coachman took off the felt hat on his head, revealing a young and valiant face. Brother, I am Sun Chuang, a servant of minister who from the Ministry of Rights. My young lady is in the carriage. Sun Chuang. Dao Xiao knew this name. As one of the captains of the young master's guards, he naturally had to be familiar with certain situations. This was to prevent a flood from flooding the Dragon King's temple. Yes, you know me? Sun Chuang looked at Dao Xiao with a suspicious gaze. As a captain of the embroidered uniform guards, even if he had never seen someone before, he would still have an impression of them. For example, he was sure that he had never met the person in front of him before. Facing Sun Chuang's question, Dao Xiao did not answer. Instead, he shook his head and said, "It is not important whether I know you or not. Who is in the carriage? Please open the curtain and take a look." Who are you? I have been to the Yang manor a few times. Why have I not seen you before? When Sun Chuang heard that he was going to open the curtain, his face revealed a sullen expression. In ancient times, when a young lady went out, she would not easily show her face to outsiders. Otherwise, where would the words reserved and well-bred come from? Seeing that Sun Chuang was questioning him, Dao Xiao replied with a cold laugh, "Forget it. Since you are not willing to open the curtain, please go back." After he finished speaking, he waved his hand, indicating for Sun Chuang to drive the carriage away from the Yang manor. Wait! At this moment, a woman's voice came from the carriage. Then, the window opened, revealing Hu Yan's peerless face. However, at this moment, her face was filled with anxiety. Her face was not as rosy as before, but rather pale. Who was Hu Yan? She was Yang Qindong's future wife candidate. As one of the captains of the guards, how could Dao Xiao not know her? When he raised his head and saw that it was indeed this young lady, he immediately lowered his head and clasped his hands together. Sorry for the offense. This is a critical time. Please forgive me. You should go back quickly. After Dao Xiao knew who was in the carriage, he did not even have the courage to look at her. He no longer had the stern look he had before. Instead, he lowered his eyes and looked like a little wife who had been bullied. In Hu Yan's eyes, this performance actually caused her to unconsciously feel joy in her heart. These were the people by the Dong Shuai's side. They were always so respectful to her. They were even more respectful to her than the people in the Hu clan. Officer Sun, drive the carriage. Hu Yan collected her thoughts and lowered the curtain. Then her voice rang out. Dao Xiao stepped aside to open the path behind him. When he turned around, he made a gesture that no one else could understand. However, Yang Si and Yang Lu, who were in the manor, saw it clearly. They knew that young mistress who had arrived. The door to the inner courtyard of the manor immediately opened. The carriage continued to move as usual. In the carriage, Xiao Qing hugged Hu Yan's arm tightly and said with a worried tone, "Young lady, we just left the Hu clan like this. Will Master be angry if he finds out?" "So what if he's angry? I was born to be the Dong Shuai's woman and die to be his ghost. If he wants me to go back, he can only do it as a corpse," Hu Yan said with a determined expression. Ever since Shihang returned to the capital and news of Yingzong and the hundreds of officials dying in battle spread, Hu Yan had shed countless tears. When she could no longer cry, she made a bold decision. She came to the Yang clan manor and lived here as Yang Qindong's wife. The two of them did not go through any ceremony. They did not even make any basic promises. When Yang Qindong left the capital, he did not even say goodbye. Logically speaking, when Hu Yan married someone else, she would not make any moral mistakes. However, she still made this decision. From this, it could be seen that she really liked Yang Qindong. She did not covet his ability to earn money and wanted to become a rich wife. In front of Xiao Qing, she expressed her attitude once again. Hu Yan thought of Sun Chuang and asked with a concerned tone, "Xiao Qing, you asked Officer Sun to send us out this time. Have you made plans for the future?" "I have." At this time, it was Xiao Qing's turn to reveal a determined expression. "I have already talked to him. In the future, we will follow Mississippi. As for whether Master will punish us or not, we will accept whatever the result is." This he was naturally referring to Sun Chuang. It was also because of love that Sun Chuang promised Xiao Qing to help her leave the Hu clan and come to the Yang clan manor. This was the result of love. However, at that time, this kind of love was not looked favorably upon. Sun Chuang also had another identity. He was the officer of the embroidered uniform guards and Hu Chongning's personal servant. Based on the fact that he had a private relationship with Xiao Qing without his master's permission, even if he was killed at that time, no one would say anything. Xiao Qing's complexion was not very good. Although her words were very firm, her whole body seemed to be trembling. Could be seen that she was afraid. Hu Yan patted the back of her hand and said, "Xiao Qing, don't be afraid. Miss is here. If father punishes you, I will take responsibility." Mississippi, the touched Xiao Qing was about to cry. She was not moved because Hu Yan was standing up for her. In fact, if something really happened, as a miss, she could not help much. She was moved because Hu Yan's feelings for her were not like that of a servant girl, but like a sister. The two were hugging each other when the inner gate of the Yang clan manor opened. Xiaoyin, Madame Shui, and Yang Duo, who had heard the news, came out to welcome them. Madame Xiang was also in the backyard. Seeing these people coming out, her eyes were full of envy. Chui Nar saw it clearly. "What, sister, are you envious?" "I'm envious. Lady Xiang replied without any hesitation. Even if Dong Shuai can't come back, or even if he is dead, do you still envy them? You are now a good girl and a virgin. If you want to marry in the future, you will not suffer too much. Chuaner knew that Madame Xiang liked the sixth young master, but had not been accepted. At that time, she felt injustice for her. Why could other people become Dong Shuai's woman? What was the difference between Madame Xiang's appearance and figure? Chapter 145. But now, after learning that Yang Qindong might have died on the battlefield, she felt a little lucky for some reason. One of the advantages was that she didn't give herself to Dong Shuai too early. But she didn't expect that Lady Xiang was still envious of Lady Shui and Lady Chao Yin. No! Lady Shui shook her head firmly after hearing Cui Naer's words. You can't find a man as outstanding as Dong Shuai in the whole world. Even if he's dead, I'm already his woman in Han Xiang's heart. As she spoke, her eyes couldn't stop tearing up. Obviously, it was too late for regrets at this moment. If she had known this would happen, she would have given herself to Dong Shuai. It would have been better than regretting it for the rest of her life. Let's not talk about how the women would welcome Hu Yen and how they would cry when they saw each other. Let's talk about the group of people outside the Yang village. They were a group of unusual guests. The reason why they were said to be uninvited guests was because they all had excited expressions on their faces. Moreover, they didn't seem to have any intention of stopping when they entered the Yangjia village. Stop! The gate of the village opened, and Yang Si strode out to welcome them. While they were still far away, he fired the 95 style in his hand into the sky. Bang! The crisp sound immediately shocked the group from afar. Then, the sound of horses reining in their horses sounded one after another. From this point alone, it could be seen that people were afraid of death, especially those who seemed to be awe-inspiring. They often cherished their lives more and were the most timid. Yang Rang and Zhao Xian were riding at the front. The sudden gunshot really frightened them. They reined in their horses in a hurry and almost lost control of their bodies and fell from their horses. Twisting their bodies, they dismounted from their horses. Their faces were as unsightly as they could be. When Zhao Xian's feet finally landed safely on the ground, he pointed to the front with a flustered and exasperated face and said, "Who are they? How can they have firearms in their hands? Where are the laws of the great Ming dynasty?" It was no wonder that Zhao Xian was so angry. Firearms were important weapons of the imperial court, and they wouldn't be shown to people easily. Even the 3 firearm battalions were very strict with the management of firearms. Unless they had the special permission of the emperor and the Ministry of War, it was difficult for anyone to take them out. But now, this thing had unexpectedly appeared in the Yang village. How could they not be shocked, angry, and indignant? The more Yang rang, the more angry he was. But he didn't know these things. In order to calm Yang's anger, he kept nodding and said, "Mr. Zhao, don't be angry. I'll ask them what's going on." As he spoke, Yang Rang turned to look at Yang Si, who was standing at the entrance of the Yang family's inner courtyard with a firearm. Instead of acting like a grandson, he roared like a master. "Who are you? How dare you block our path? Do you know who I am?" "I'm Stings, What's the reason for entering the village without permission?" Facing the imposing Yang Rang, Yang Si naturally wasn't afraid, even though he had already recognized that this person was the 6th young master's second brother. But at this time, he had brought so many embroidered uniform guards with him. His purpose was as clear as day. With regards to his own brother trying to steal the 6th young master's wife, he was no longer a member of the Yang family in his eyes. So why should he be polite? Yang Rang heard that he was just a servant, and it sounded so sarcastic. Since when did a servant dare to show off in front of his master? He didn't know how his 6th brother usually managed things. How could he not distinguish between master and servant? Humph! How dare a little servant hold a firearm? Let me tell you, you've already violated the laws of the great Ming dynasty. Now kneel and beg for mercy. For the sake of my 6th brother, I'll only kill you. I won't implicate the others in the village. Yang Rang seemed to be magnanimous, but unknowingly, he had already placed himself in the position of the head of the Yang family village. When the other servants heard their master's words, they must have been terrified. But this was Yang Si. He even beat up the messenger of the Walla. How could he shrink back because of these words? He first shook his head, and then with a trace of disdain in his eyes he said, "First, how I got the firearm is none of your business. Second, a man can only live standing, not kneeling. Third, nothing will happen to the sixth young master, let alone die. Your so-called sixth brother is simply nonsense." The rebuttals entered his ears one by one. Zhao Xian's expression changed greatly, and he added fuel to the fire. "Master Yang? Are these the servants of the Yang family? How can they be so rude?" Zhao Xian's words were like a heavy hammer, and Yang Rang's face was as red as a monkey's butt. Ever since he was a child, no one had ever insulted him like this since he learned that he was Yang Rong. But now, in front of a servant and in front of a servant of the Yang family, he was being laughed at. How could he hold back his anger? Immediately, he looked at Yang Si with eyes that were spitting fire. "As the second master of the Yang family, I order you to kneel and beg for mercy immediately. Otherwise, I'll exterminate 3 generations of your family." He even said something like exterminating 3 generations of his family. Could be seen how angry and hateful he was at this moment. If looks could eat people, Yang Si would have been eaten by Yang Rang countless times. Yang Rang roared furiously. At this time, Yang Rang did not look like a scholar at all. Looking at him, it really gave people a terrifying feeling. Yang Si was not an ordinary person, let alone an ordinary person. If shouting could make him submit, then Yang Qindong's previous hellish training would really be useless. At this moment, he was completely unfazed by Yang Rang's towering rage. He was still as calm and collected as ever, as if these words were not directed at him. He was just a bystander watching others put on a show. Seeing that Beta Persei was so angry, but the person opposite him did not have the slightest intention of retreating, Zhao Xian did not put his hopes on him. Instead, he turned to the brocade guards beside him and said, "Go, I'll leave this place to you. Since some people don't know what's good for them, there's no need to keep them." Zhao Xian's murderous intent was out, and he decided to suppress everything with bloody martial arts. Perhaps there were times when reasoning was useless. Whoever had the bigger fist would be the one who had the final say. However, the one who had the biggest fist was not Zhao Xian, but Yang Si, who held the 95 style. Ever since he followed Yang Qindong, he rarely had the chance to touch a gun. After all, once a gunshot was heard, it would inevitably attract the attention of all parties. Only when he really wanted to do it would he ask for leave from Tiger's Mane and go to Foul Crow Mountain Forest, which was more than 10 miles away from Yang Village, to shoot a few shots. And now, the opportunity to shoot was given to him. How could Yang Si not grasp it well? There was a hint of slyness in his eyes, and he revealed a playful expression. When he saw the brocade guards start to run towards him, he raised his hand and pulled the trigger with his finger. A crisp bang sound was heard. The second gunshot caused the embroidered uniform guards who were running forward to stop. Based on their instincts, they knew that there was danger ahead. "What are you afraid of? He's only one person with a firearm. There are so many of you. How can that firearm fire continuously?" Zhao Xian's shout came from behind. Although he was also very curious, he did not see Yang Si fill the gun with gunpowder and fire a second shot. However, relying on the fact that there were so many people, he still shouted with full confidence. His shout seemed to have given the embroidered uniform guards courage. Thinking that the opponent was indeed only one person with a firearm, and that there were more than 20 of them, what was there to be afraid of? After looking at each other, they gathered their courage and continued to run forward. Yang Si's mouth slightly twitched. He was clearly very happy, but he still pretended to be helpless as he muttered, "You forced me to do this. Hee. Then let's see who's stronger and see if there are people in this world who aren't afraid of death." The 95 style was raised, and it was a stark contrast to the previous frivolous attitude. At this moment, Yang Si was incomparably serious. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared at the leg of the brocade guard running at the front. His right index finger lightly moved, and his shoulder was rebounded by the recoil of the firearm. In the next second, the bullet spun out of the barrel and accurately landed on the thigh of the brocade guard. Bang! The person fell. Their coordination was extremely synchronized. Bang bang! After this shot, Yang Si fired 2 more bullets. 3 brocade guards fell to the ground one after another. Even though they fell to the ground, they did not forget to cry out in pain. At the same time, they rolled on the ground to show what kind of pain they were experiencing. This scene also frightened the others. At this moment, the brocade guards could not help but stop. Then, it was unknown who took the lead, but after a shout, they all ran back in the direction of Zhao Xian. At this moment, Zhao Xian was also scared silly. He completely forgot to urge the brocade guards to continue their charge. This was the first time he saw a firearm that could fire continuously. Moreover, it was so accurate and so fast. All of this was beyond his understanding. The fleeing brocade guards returned to Zhao Xian's side. Then, they all looked at Yang Si with frightened eyes. It was as if he was a murderous demon. It made people afraid, terrified, and powerless. How is it? Do you still want to charge? Looking at the 3 people on the ground, Yang Si seemed to be very satisfied with his masterpiece. He even whistled happily. Then, his face became serious again and he said, I already said that you are not allowed to charge into the Yang family manor. You just didn't listen. Now, this is the result of your own actions. Immediately take the injured people away and scram. Chapter 146. Yang Si raised his hand and fired again. The bullet hit the back of Zhao Xian's saber, and the powerful force sent the saber flying. This shot also completely woke Zhao Xian up. He was so scared that he knelt on the ground with a plop. At the same time, his whole body was trembling. Taking a closer look, his crotch was wet. This was what people called peeing. There was a distance of 60 steps. Not only could the firearm hit, but it also hit with such precision. This made the other embroidered uniform guards completely deflate. At the same time, they finally knew what kind of person they were facing. Just now, they wanted to win with numbers. If it wasn't for this person showing mercy, they didn't know if any of them would be able to return alive. What are you looking at? Why aren't you taking the injured people away? Do you want to see them die? Yang Si saw that the enemy had been scared out of their wits and let out a fierce roar. This roar gave all the embroidered uniform guards a big fright. At the same time, it made them run forward again. They picked up their 3 injured companions who were still rolling on the ground and retreated. The shot that hit the saber completely extinguished Zhao Xian's arrogance. No one would have thought that when he finally left, he would actually bow and smile as he retreated step by step. Perhaps he had done too many bad things and was worried that Yang Si would suddenly appear behind him and take his life. When the group came, they were aggressive. But when they left, they were dejected, creating a sharp contrast. Only when they were some distance away from the Yangjia Manor's gate did Zhao Xian and the other embroidered uniform guards sit on the ground with a plop, gasping for breath. Thinking back to the scene just now, it was like taking a trip to the gates of hell. To be able to return alive, it was the accumulated merit of their ancestors, who knew how long they had been gasping for. After finally calming down, Yang Rang asked Zhao Xian with lingering fear, Mr. Zhao, what should we do next? He has such a powerful firearm in his hand. It seems that we won't be a match for him. Why don't we bring more people? Like you said, they only have 1 firearm. We have more people. As long as we rush in front of them, victory will be ours. Forget it. There is something fishy about this matter. I have to report it to Eunuch before making a decision. Zhao Xian shook his head. He saw how powerful the 9.5 was, and because of this, he became greedy. He thought about how powerful such a good firearm would be if he could get his hands on it. At that time, if anyone was dissatisfied with him, he would just raise his head and shoot them. No matter how powerful a person was, they would not be a match for this thing. Zhao Xian had the thought of pocketing for himself, so he naturally would not let others know. In order to appease Yang Rang, he deliberately said, Master Beta Persei, you can go back first. I will report everything that happened to my father-in-law. You just have to wait for the news. Yang Rang did not doubt him. After all, Zhao Xian was Jin Ying's servant. They had a close relationship. Since Zhao Xian had said so, he could only choose to believe him. The two parted ways after entering the outer city of the capital. Zhao Xian did indeed go to see his master, Jin Ying, but he did not tell her what had happened. He only said that because they had suffered a defeat, the people of the immortal abode were extremely afraid. They needed some time to calm down before they could do business as usual and earn money again. He would follow up on this matter. Perhaps Jin Ying trusted her servant Zhao Xian completely, or perhaps it was because she had too much work to do. In any case, she believed his words and did not ask any further questions. After leaving, Zhao Xian immediately began to search for some ruffians in the city. There was no lack of desperados among these people. As long as they were given enough money and benefits, there was nothing they did not dare to do. In just 2 days, Zhao Xian had gathered a group of nearly 50 people. After promising that if they went to the Yang family manor to retrieve something, each person would receive 100 taels of silver. These people all followed his lead and were willing to listen to his arrangements. In order to achieve a surefire success, Zhao Xian decided to take action at night. That afternoon, he led these people out of the southern part of the city to make preparations for the operation at night. Just when he thought that no one knew what he was doing, and was even thinking of offering the weapon to his master, Jin Ying, the benefits he would receive would not be small. The people of the security bureau had been watching his every move for the past few days. As soon as they left the city gates, the news was reported to the deputy director, Yang San. As the deputy director, he was actually the leader of the security bureau. After training, Yang San had become much more mature, both mentally and mentally. As soon as he received the news, he quickly analyzed that this was a sign that Zhao Xian was about to make a move. After injuring the 3 embroidered uniform guards, the Yang clan manor had entered a state of emergency. They had even prepared for a large group of embroidered uniform guards to attack the manor. Under Yang San, Yang Si, and Yang Lu's joint plan, they even prepared a rocket launcher, a highly destructive weapon, just in case. Unexpectedly, for the past 2 days, it had been very peaceful outside the manor. After investigation, they found out that Zhao Xian had other plans. He probably did not report the situation truthfully to his master, Jin Ying. This could be seen from the fact that he had privately spent a lot of money to move the 3 injured embroidered uniform guards together for treatment. He wanted to hide something and wanted to play a big game of chess. But what did he want to do? Yang San and the others were only suspicious. All they did was send people to keep an eye on him. Now that there was finally news, as the deputy director, he slapped his thigh and said, "This Zhao Xian's appetite is not small. He wants to destroy the Yang clan manor privately, but he doesn't know how much weight he has." Yang San was really angry. He had clearly seen the power of firearms, but he still wanted to bring 50 people to attack the manor. How bold was he? He must have thought that the Yang clan manor only had one such advanced and powerful firearm. It must be so. Even though his thoughts were so childish, he still dared to have such ambition. Such a person could not be left alive. Yang San immediately made the decision to take the initiative to attack and get rid of Zhao Xian and his group. He also hurriedly sent his suggestion to Yang Si and Yang Lu. 60 miles northeast of Shangxi Yuzhou, a group of people was resting in the mountains. In order to prevent others from discovering their tracks, they did not even dare to start a fire. In the mountains, from a high vantage point, one could see the official road and the majestic Zijing Pass not far away. Naturally, they saw the Walla army knocking on the pass. Why are there enemies here? Could it be that our great Ming has fallen into the hands of the enemy? In the crowd, Zhu Qizhen, who was wearing a tiger's armor, looked very miserable with his hair disheveled. At this moment, when he saw the Walla army that was breaking through the pass, there was a hint of fear and worry between his brows. Ever since he was saved by Yang Qindong, Zhu Qizhen's courage had become much smaller. Along the way, he encountered a few small Walla teams. The scene of them fighting and killing the enemy made him see the fragility of human life. Even though they were all killed by the cold front led by Xiao Feng from a distance, every time they cleaned up the battlefield, when they walked up and saw the various miserable conditions of the corpses, it still hammered his heart time and time again. In the imperial court, in the palace, he would sometimes receive military reports saying that there was a rebellion at a certain place, that there was an enemy at a certain place, and that many soldiers had died in the process. But that was just a number that was forgotten after hearing it. How could it have such a deep impression? He had seen too many scenes and seen too many dead people. Zhu Qizhen secretly decided that he would just obediently stay in the palace in the future. It was more appropriate to leave the matters of war to the generals. An emperor who was skilled in both the pen and the sword sounded good, but it was not so easy to do it. Most importantly, he was not made for this. Along the way, Zhu Qizhen saw himself more clearly. This was something that Yang Qindong did not expect. With history already beginning to change, no one knew if this change in Zhu Qizhen's mental state was good or bad. It was also because of Zhu Qizhen that this group did not travel very quickly. This was especially true after passing through Yuzhou and getting closer and closer to the capital. This was not because he was afraid of returning home. It was simply because he knew that he was safe, as the Emperor Zhu Qizhen had begun to put on airs. In the absence of any threat to his life, his body began to rebel and display various signs of discomfort. As he walked faster, his body began to develop all sorts of small problems. They were no longer on the run, so no one could forcefully do anything to the emperor. They could only carefully accompany him. However, they had only traveled less than 100 miles in 3 days, and this was under the condition that they were riding on healthy horses. This ant-like crawling speed made Yang Qindong extremely anxious. In the battle of the Tumu fortress, Yang Qindong did not interfere too much, or perhaps it could be said that he did not have the authority or opportunity to interfere too much. Only when the situation was settled and chaos descended did he strike with lightning speed to complete his plan. Yang Qindong, who had long known what would happen, had calculated everything beforehand and made all his arrangements come into use. Present, everything seemed to be going according to plan, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. But Zhu Qizhen's speed was truly beyond his expectations. If this continued, it would take at least 7 or 8 days, perhaps even longer, to reach the capital. He had always been worried about the safety of the people in the Yang clan manor, so he decided that he could not wait any longer. He had to strike ahead of time. Passively waiting had never been something that Yang Qindong was willing to do. Even though the Yang clan manor had Yang Si, Yang Lu, Dao Xiao, and the others, as well as the Phantom Sniper Squad in the shadows, they were still a force to be reckoned with. With these people, unless an army invaded, ordinary attacks would not be able to harm them. But there was always an exception. History had long ago proven that unexpected things would happen from time to time. In order to avoid the possibility of an accident, he needed to return to the capital as quickly as possible. Chapter 147. Your Majesty, it has been nearly half a month since we left the Tumu castle. We have been very safe with the protection of the mercenaries. But after all, outsiders don't know our situation, and in order to avoid being hunted down by the Walla, we deliberately did not get in touch with the outside world. Now that so much time had passed, the situation in the capital was truly worrisome. I will be the vanguard and return to the capital first to tell the officials that Your Majesty is fine, so they can be at ease and stabilize the court. After thinking about it again and again, Yang Qindong finally decided to leave first and did not travel with Zhu Qizhen, who was crawling like a snail. Yes, we need someone to report back in advance. Although Zhu Qizhen's body was not in good condition and he did not have enough exercise, his head was not injured and he was still very clear-headed at this time. He naturally knew that the news of him being fine had to be reported back first. Otherwise, who knew what would happen after a long time? But it was very important who to send back. After all, these powerful mercenaries were invited by Yang Qindong. If he was not there, who could take care of the situation if there was a problem? It was not easy to escape the claws of the Walla, but if they became a pawn in the hands of these mercenaries, they would not be able to find a place to cry. Zhu Qizhen agreed to send someone back to inform, but it seemed that he did not agree with Yang Qindong's return. The Minister of War, Kuang Yi, and the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, looked at each other and immediately understood. This time it was because of Yang Chundong that their lives were saved. Could be called a great kindness. And now it was time to repay the kindness. Immediately, the two of them knelt on the ground at the same time and said to Zhu Qizhen, "Your Majesty, we agree with Yang Chindong's request. But for the sake of justice, we ask the benefactor to reward Yang Chindong for his great merit in this matter and ask Your Majesty to reward him. Your Majesty, please reward him." The other 7 officials who reacted were also awakened by this kneeling and immediately knelt on the ground to beg. This kneeling was to thank Yang Chindong for saving their lives, but at the same time it was also for themselves. Thinking about it, if Yang Chindong could be conferred a title, then the 9 of them would at least be rewarded for their hard work. At the very least, he would be given the title of a loyal subject, which could be used as a condition for promotion in the future. Of course, there was a precondition to all of this, and that was that Yang Chindong, who had made the greatest contribution, had obtained the benefits first. Otherwise, how could they ask for credit? As soon as the 9 ministers knelt, Zhu Qizhen immediately felt like he was the emperor. Feeling smug, he nodded his head and said, "That's right. Everyone is right." This time, Yang Shima has indeed performed meritorious service in protecting His Majesty and deserves to be heavily rewarded. In that case, I will confer Yang Chundong the title of Loyal and Courageous Count, with a salary of 1,100 stones. He will be able to command the troops in brocade clothes, and will be given a certificate. The Ming dynasty had always had a rule that those who did not contribute to the country and the military were not allowed to be bestowed with titles. This time, Yang Chundong had saved the emperor and 9 important ministers. This was definitely a military merit, and he deserved this title. "Thank you, Your Majesty." After receiving the reward, Yang Chundong immediately knelt down to thank the emperor. "Your Majesty is wise." Kuang Yi, Wang Zhua, and the other important ministers also knelt down one by one, thanking the emperor for his wisdom. Yang Chundong was conferred the title of Count, which was equivalent to receiving a very heavy reward. Then, would their rewards be far away? "Everyone, please rise." Zhu Qizhen's face was filled with satisfaction. He liked the feeling of being bowed to 3 times and kowtowed to 9 times. This made him feel the prestige of being an emperor. However, after a smile, he also expressed his intention to send Yang Chundong back to the capital. Otherwise, why would he let him be the commander of the brocade guards? This was an official position in the upper echelons of the brocade guards. With this status, it would be much more convenient for him to move about the capital. With the title of Count, Yang Chundong was no longer the crown prince's steed, but the Count of loyalty and courage. At this moment, he stood up and once more requested that he return to the capital first to make arrangements. "Okay, we approve. Count of loyalty and courage, which minister do you need to go with you?" After making his decision, Zhu Qizhen began to consider who to send into the capital. In his view, Yang Chundong was still a little too light. This person had only been a 5th-rank official in the past, and he had only recently been conferred the title of Count of Loyalty and Courage. No one knew that sending him back would be very inconvenient. Zhu Qizhen had his own thoughts, and after saying this, he turned his gaze to the other 9 ministers. These 9 were all civil officials, and only Kuang Yi was the Minister of War. However, he was already very old, and it would be inappropriate for him to be in a hurry. Thus, none of them dared to meet the emperor's gaze. However, Yang Chundong had seen the reactions of his ministers, and he had never planned on bringing anyone back. After all, after returning to the capital, there were many things that he might not do according to the rules. Thus, he clasped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, in this subject's view, we shouldn't have the other ministers accompany us. They are all exhausted from the journey. I want to bring the least amount of people back to the capital as quickly as possible. I'm afraid that the ministers' bodies won't be able to take it. If something happens along the way, it will be difficult to deal with it. Why don't this subject go alone? Your Majesty only needs to write an edict for this subject. This way, it will be easier to gain the trust of others, and it will also let everyone know that Your Majesty is well." Seeing that none of the 9 ministers took the initiative to step forward, and that Yang Qindong's words made sense. Zhu Qizhen pondered for a moment before saying, "All right, since that's the case, do you have pen and paper? We will write an edict to reward the Count of Loyalty and Courage and ask him to write a letter for the Count of Loyalty and Courage to bring it to Empress Dowager Sun and Empress Qin. Come, bring me pen and ink." Yang Qindong signaled to Beta Persei with his eyes. Beta Persei immediately responded, and then took out the pen, ink, paper, and inkstone that he had prepared in advance from the bag behind him. In such an environment, Yang Qindong was still able to bring these seemingly useless things. It had to be said that he was really considerate. Everything was prepared, and the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, personally ground the ink. Soon, Zhu Qizhen personally finished writing an edict and a letter to the harem. Yang Qindong held the letter with the ink still wet and named more than 30 people. Among them were the First Guard, Qiu Vi, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and others who had been hiding in the cold front. Only Xiao Feng and 70 people were left behind, and Yang Wu was left behind to protect the emperor. Before leaving, Yang Qindong deliberately gave Xiao Feng a look that no one else knew. Even if Xiao Feng was a mercenary and came for money, that was anyone who had money could use it. With Yang Qindong's understanding of Zhu Qizhen, he would definitely contact Xiao Feng if he had such an opportunity. He didn't do so before because of his face. Now that he had left, some words could naturally be said. This was probably the main reason why Zhu Qizhen agreed to let Yang Qindong go first. The night was dark and windy. It was the perfect time to kill. The night was not bad. There was wind, but it wasn't strong. It was so dark that one couldn't even see one's fingers. This kind of night was the best time to do some evil deeds. Zhao Xian slowly moved towards the Yang village with the 50 men who were willing to die that he had recruited with a large sum of money. Although Zhao Xian was Jin Ying's servant, he was an ambitious person. He wanted to act alone and obtain great merit. Once he obtained the firearm that could fire continuously and accurately, he would be able to present it to his master, Jin Ying. It would only be a matter of time before he would be blessed with great fortune. He naturally had his reasons for not reporting this to his superiors and not mobilizing a large number of embroidered uniform guards. Firstly, he was afraid that the merit would be divided. Secondly, he was worried that if too many people appeared and caused too much of a commotion, the other party would eventually destroy the exquisite firearm. If that was the case, there was no need to mobilize a large force just to destroy Yang village without their master, Yang Qindong. With the idea of obtaining great merit, Zhao Xian and the 50 people moved toward Yang village in the dark night. As they moved forward, they didn't pay much attention to concealment and formation. After all, they were at least 10 li away from Yang village. The night was so dark that they couldn't think of any reason for them to be discovered or be in danger. However, they didn't know that 3 li ahead, at a fork in the road that led to Yang village, the ghost sniper squad was waiting for them. After receiving the news that Zhao Xian was going to act, the Yang village was in an uproar. What others didn't expect was that the focus of the argument was actually who would lead the troops. The strength of an army depended on its morale. Even if it was a well-trained army, it would only be a defeated army when its morale was completely gone. Previously, there was no lack of elite troops from the Ming dynasty in the Tumu Castle. Many of them were even left behind by the Ming dynasty's Emperor Zhu Di. However, after losing their morale, weren't they still unable to withstand a single blow? Not to mention how hard the Yangtze's new army trained and the price they had to pay to become a qualified cold vanguard. In terms of morale, no one could compare. Among them, the fiercest were the Second Guard's Captain Dao Xiao and the Ghost Sniper Squad's Captain Bai Zhua. The two of them led a team of 10 and 20 people respectively. In Yang Qindong's eyes, they were the elites of the elites. They were two sharp fists. Now that there was a mission, these two fists wanted to attack. They wanted to obtain merit and perform better. However, in the end, the one who won was Captain Bai Zhua. It was not for anything else but because before Yang Qindong left, he had said that he had some secret things to do. The first was the Ghost Sniper Squad. This was because this was a hidden army that could attack the enemy from a long distance and not be discovered. The so-called hidden army referred to the fact that they could achieve the goal of being invisible to a certain extent. Before others could discover them, they would be eliminated. Chapter 148. This time, dealing with Zhao Xian was a secret mission. Mobilizing the Ghost Shadow Sniper Squad was the most appropriate move for this kind of mission. When Baizu mentioned the sixth young master's message, Dao Xiao had no choice but to lower his head. The advantage of the guards was in their defense. They could even block bullets for their master in times of danger. Loyalty was a must. However, they did not have the ability to wipe out the enemy in an instant. The equipment in their hands made it very difficult for them to accomplish this goal. In the end, Baizu won the mission and Yang Lu followed to supervise the completion of the mission. The final result still required him to personally report to Yang Qindong. This was one of the privileges of a servant. This was the meaning of the phrase, a seventh-rank official in front of the Prime Minister. After receiving the mission, Baizu left in high spirits. Not long after, he brought his 20 team members and Yang Lu, a total of 22 people, to the fork in the road. According to their previous discussion, even if Zhao Xian and the others appeared here, as long as their goal was not in the direction of Yangjia village, they should not touch him. After all, the sixth young master was not here. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. In other words, although Baizu had made preparations, the final choice was still in Zhao Xian's hands. As long as he was not greedy, death could still be avoided. However, since Zhao Xian had seen the power of the new firearms and had made preparations for a few days, how could he not make a move on Yangjia village? Therefore, when Zhao Xian led more than 50 people to the fork in the road, he did not hesitate at all and chose the direction that led to the Yang village. The moment they took the first step, they were destined to meet a tragic end. In order to complete this mission, Baizu had brought the most advanced weapons and equipment. Needless to say, the sniper rifle had a shooting range of up to 2 kilometers. At the same time, it was equipped with extremely advanced night vision goggles, which ensured that the light in the field of vision was not too different from the light in the day. It was still possible to see every movement of the target clearly, and even every hair on their body. Under these conditions, one could imagine what awaited Zhao Xian and the others. The silhouettes of Zhao Xian and the others appeared clearly in the scope. These men in black seemed to be using the darkness of the night to disguise themselves. But in fact, every movement was magnified and could be seen clearly. Even the slight change in their eyes could be seen clearly. Ready, 3, 2, 1. Fire. As the captain, Baizu was very calm at this time. Unlike the other teammates, he didn't need a spotter. Even though Yang Lu was crawling beside him, he was only here to observe the situation and wouldn't help anyone. Baizu didn't need a spotter. He was still comparable to any group of subordinates. When he gave the order to shoot, according to the attack plan, the men in black walking in the last row became the first targets to be shot. Swish, 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 swish. Under the silencer, several flames suddenly appeared, followed by the sound of 11 black-clothed men falling to the ground, followed by the swollen bodies. One of them didn't get hit in the vitals because the silencer would change the aerodynamic efficiency of the bullet when it was fired. This would change the speed and direction of the bullet, which would affect the sniping distance and shooting accuracy. Since he wasn't hit in the vitals, he didn't die immediately. Instead, he struggled and screamed in pain. In such a dark night, the sudden miserable screams immediately attracted the other black-clothed men to hide in all directions like birds startled by the twang of a bow. In a situation where they did not know what had happened, there were even some who directly fell to the ground. Could be seen that they were indeed frightened. In an era where ordinary firearms were considered the most advanced firearms, the sniper rifle was something that many people had never seen before. There were no signs of life. Just a few flames lit up and people fell to the ground dead. To the ancients who did not know anything about technology, this was no different from seeing a ghost. It made their bodies tremble, and at the same time, their hearts were also trembling. Once the order to shoot was given, the attack wouldn't stop unless all the enemies were eliminated. Even if these people were trembling and feeling fear from the depths of their souls, it couldn't change their fate at all. The flashes of light were like the fluttering of the world, dazzling and eye-catching. What followed was the men in black being killed on the ground one after another. No matter where they hid, whether they were standing, squatting, or lying down, it didn't change their fate of death. After the flashes of light, after only 5 rounds, only Zhao Xian was left on the battlefield. It wasn't that he hid well, nor was it that he was lucky. Leaving him alive was originally Yang Lu's request. More than 50 people were handed over to the Ghost Shadow Sniper team, leaving 1 person for himself to kill. This was the result that Yang Lu came to after discussing with Baizhua. They didn't want no one to know of their existence when they first appeared. Even if Zhao Xian was destined to die, it was also a kind of glory for him to know who killed him before he died. Originally, there was a group of living people around him. Although these people had cold expressions and even had a murderous aura in their eyes, they were still living people after all. It wasn't like now, where the surroundings were filled with a deathly aura and the smell of fresh blood assailed his nostrils. Zhao Xian felt as if he was living in hell. There was only deathly aura around him. Just as his eyes kept turning and his mind was blank, frightened by the scene in front of him, Yang Lu appeared from a bush and walked out. Who are you? Let me tell you, my master is Lord Jining. If you dare to kill me, he will definitely not let you go. Feeling a black shadow creeping towards him in the distance, Zhao Xian's lips kept trembling as he tried to threaten the other party with a trembling voice. He was a fish on the chopping block. At this moment, Zhao Xian's voice was so weak and pale that it didn't pose the slightest threat to Yang Lu, who was getting closer and closer. With steady steps, Yang Lu walked step by step like a heavy hammer pounding on the soul. He arrived in front of Zhao Xian and raised the broadsword in his hand high. Kid, I'll give you a benefit before you die. I'll let you be a ghost that knows the truth. Since you've offended the 6th young master, death is your only fate. You're from the Yang village? No, that's impossible. Your master is already dead and you still dare to offend Lord Jining. You're all destined to die. At this moment, Zhao Xian finally regained his senses and realized Yang Lu's identity. He then shouted hysterically. Unfortunately, no matter how much he shouted, he couldn't change the outcome. As Yang Lu raised his broadsword high and brought it down, a bloody head flew into the air. Zhao Xian was dead. When he died, his widened eyes seemed to express the unwillingness in his heart. He finally knew how powerful the Yang village was. He knew that the Yang village had more than one powerful firearm. He knew that the Yang village was not to be trifled with and was powerful. If he had another chance to choose, he definitely wouldn't have brought his men to the Yang village to steal the credit. Instead, he would have brought a large group of embroidered uniform guards to the Yang village. He didn't believe that the people of the Yang village would dare to resist against the embroidered uniform guards. Zhao Xian really didn't understand the people of the Yang village. They were soldiers of the new era and were particular about obeying orders. As long as it was an order from Yang Qindong, even if they knew that there was a sea of fire in front of them, no one would frown when advancing. Even if the Imperial Secret Service really came, what they needed to do was to actively counterattack without the slightest hesitation. Zhao Xian was dead. He died without any signs of life. As the master, Jining didn't know at all. He really had too many things to do. Wang Zhen still had many remaining supporters to deal with. After all, Wang Zhen had covered the sky with one hand all these years. Whether it was in the palace or outside, he had accumulated too much power. It would take a lot of time to get rid of them. Other than Wang Zhen, there were many people who had to be dealt with in time. Chapter 149. He did not know that Zhao Xian had already gone to hell. He thought that he had succeeded and that Jining was going to reward him. He did not forget that the eunuch in charge had said that there would be more benefits for him. He was still looking forward to being promoted and getting rich. Yang Rang came to the palace with a trace of anticipation and excitement. The moment he saw Jining, he knelt on the ground without any bottom line and kept saying auspicious things about Jining. "All right, Lord Yang, please get up." A satisfied smile hung on Jin Ying's face. What he loved the most was to see those high and mighty so-called pillars of the country, the aristocratic families, kneel down and salute him. It gave him a great sense of accomplishment. Yang Rang thanked him profusely and stood up again. Then he stood there respectfully with a bashful smile on his face. Lord Yang, this time I called you here to ask you, do you know where Zhao Xian is now? And what happened when you went to the Yang village that day? Jin Ying's question made Yang Rang's heart tremble. He had thought that the matter had been resolved. Unexpectedly, it was not the case at all. Zhao Xian had actually disappeared. For a moment, while he was surprised, he recounted everything that had happened at the Yang village that day. First, Jin Ying listened carefully. However, the more he listened, the more complicated his expression became. As the master, he knew very well what kind of person Zhao Xian was. He was a person who rejoiced in grandiose achievements. It was only because he was very loyal to him that he was still used by him. Thinking that now that he had great power in his hands, he thought that the matter that was given to him would not go wrong. However, he had never imagined that things would turn out like this. He had a feeling that Zhao Xian's life was in danger and that this matter must have something to do with the Yang village. Lord Yang, you said that when you went that day, the servants of the Yang village had an unknown firearm and that it was very powerful? Is that so? Jin Ying thought of the crux of the matter. This was probably the result of Zhao Xian's selfishness. That's right, eunuch Jin. Those firearms are very powerful. Not only do they have great lethality, but they are also very accurate. Most importantly, those firearms can fire continuously. It's not something that our great firearms camp can compare with. When I saw it, I was also very curious. All right. Jin Ying's expression darkened as she interrupted Yang Rang's boastful speech. I know what happened. You can go back first. Jin Ying waved her hand. She didn't have time to waste on Yang Rang. Her mind was filled with questions about where these advanced firearms had come from and who had given the Yang family servants the courage to confront the brocade guards. Yes. Yang Rang saw that Jin Ying was a little unhappy and prepared to leave. But when he retreated, he thought of something and said aloud, by the way, that servant is Yang Si who beat up the Walla messenger not long ago. Qian Sengbao even went to find trouble with him. I know. Jin Ying nodded. After Yang Si withdrew, he immediately ordered people to call for the brocade guards who had followed Zhao Xian to the Yang village that day. At the same time, he also called for Qian Senbao to ask about Yang Si. Soon, 3 injured brocade guards were brought over and confirmed that Yang Rang's words were true. Not long after, Qian Sengbao also rushed over. Qian Sengbao didn't dare to refuse Jin Ying's summons. Now, anyone could see that this person had great power and influence. His superior, the head eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate, Chen Guan, had been imprisoned even though he tried to curry favor with Wang Zhenyu's faction. If he performed well and was promoted, it wouldn't be a problem for him to become the head eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate. All of this depended on Jin Ying's attitude. Greetings, eunuch Jin. When Qian Sengbao appeared, he was very respectful to Jin Ying. His eyes were full of flattery. When a person can decide your future and fate, it is very difficult for you to appear as an equal in front of him. Eunuch Qian, let me ask you, what is the matter with Yang Si? Jin Ying didn't have any intention of exchanging pleasantries. They had all been in the palace for many years, so he understood Wang Zhenyu's personality better than anyone else. When Wang Zhenyu had been in power, Wang Zhenyu hadn't even looked at him. Now that he had power, Wang Zhenyu wanted to curry favor with him. This was the nature of people. Yang Si? Qian Sengbao was rather confused by this question. He did his best to search for this name, but he didn't come up with anything. Yang Si of the Yang clan, a servant of Ma Yang. Jin Ying reminded him, impatience on his face. Oh, I remember now. That Yang Si once beat up the guard captain of the Walla emissary, Tuj at the gate of the immortal abode. Because this matter involved diplomatic matters, the higher-ups gave me the task, and I had Tang Tong of the brocade guard go to the Yang clan to demand for him. It was said that he had already left the capital and gone to the Yang clan's Jianing residence. Later on, because of the conflict between the Walla and our great Ming, no one asked about this matter anymore. Qian Sengbao was also confused as he answered the question. He didn't understand why Lao Jinying was so concerned about a mere 5th-rank servant. He went to the Yang clan's residence? Humph. Let me tell you, a few days ago, he publicly injured 3 of my embroidered uniform guards who went to Yang village to enforce the law. Not only that, but my servant Zhao Xian has also disappeared. I suspect that this has a lot to do with Yang Si. As Jining spoke, he let out a soft snort, expressing the dissatisfaction in his heart. Something like that happened? Qian Sengbao had truly been shocked by this matter. Putting aside the fact that no one in the world dared to openly oppose the brocade guard, just the disappearance of Jin Ying's servant was a major matter. Based on this, the Yang village was doomed this time. After knowing Jin Ying's intentions, Qian Sengbao understood what he had to do next. He immediately took the initiative and said, "Don't worry, eunuch Jin. I will bring some people to the Yang clan and bring the criminal over. At the same time, I will search the place to see if I can find Zhao Xian's whereabouts." Very good. Seeing that Qian Sengbao understood his intentions, Jin Ying's expression eased. "Go ahead, but you must be vigilant. There is news that the other party has a new type of firearm with great destructive power. You must bring more people with you. Also, bring Mao Mu with you. In the past, when Wang Zhen communicated with the Yang clan, he relied on this person. Let him reason things out first. It's best not to make a move if possible." Of course, Jin Ying wasn't someone who bemoaned the state of the universe and pitted the fate of mankind. He didn't have the slightest intention of being soft-hearted when it came to the lives of the Yang clan people. He was worried that the advanced firearm would be destroyed, so he wanted to use the method of peace talks to resolve the matter. Qian Sengbao left after receiving his orders. As he instructed someone to find Tang Tong, Chen Hu, and have him wait outside the palace with his men, he walked straight to where Mao Mu was resting. Mao Mu was the last-ranked eunuch in the ceremony directorate. Previously, he had been living a very glorious life, but now he was like a rat on the street, hated by everyone. Speaking of eunuchs, there were too many differences between them and ordinary people. Their jealousy was several times greater than that of ordinary people. The thing they couldn't stand the most was others having a good time. Perhaps it was because of their bodies, but they were more passionate about power and money. Whenever they had the chance, they would always try to get some benefits for themselves. And when they had the chance to step on others, they wouldn't be soft-hearted at all. Previously, because of Yang Qindong's support, Mao Mu had been promoted several times. From a small eunuch leader to a large eunuch leader. As his status changed, he who represented the diapers earned a lot of money. For a period of time, other than Wang Zhen, few people dared to give him any face. But with the defeat at the front lines, and the news of Ying Zong and hundreds of officials dying in battle, Mao Mu's good days came to an end. There was no one to protect him. What followed was the jealousy of all the eunuchs. Almost everyone with some ability came to him to take advantage of him. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Mao Mu was decisive. First, he gave most of the money he had saved to Jin Ying, drawing a clear line between him and Wang Zhen. Then, he used the rest of the money to get rid of the other eunuchs who came to make trouble for him. For a time, it could be said that he spent money like it was dirt. Only then did he manage to keep his position. Even so, his authority was no longer what it used to be. In addition, something had happened to Yang Qindong. Now, he couldn't even find a source of diapers. He was completely empty-handed. All day long, he sighed in the palace. He only hated his bad fate. He had just met a wise master, and it hadn't been long before an accident happened. He really didn't know what to do. Just as he was shaking his head and sighing in his room, the door was pushed open. The supervising eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate, Qian Sengbao, walked in. When he saw Qian Sengbao, Mao Mu immediately climbed down from his bed. "I didn't know that eunuch Qian was coming. Please forgive me for not coming out to meet you." Looking at the awe-inspiring Mao Mu 10 days ago, seeing him being so respectful now, Qian Sengbao was very pleased. "Eunuch Mao, eunuch Jin has an errand for us to do. Pack up and come with me." Okay. As Mao Mu spoke, he turned and opened a cabinet at the head of his bed. He took out 200 taels of silver and handed it to Qian Sengbao. "Eunuch Qian, this is the last of my wealth. Although it isn't much, it is a token of my sincerity. Please accept it. 200 taels of silver really wasn't much. At least, it wasn't enough to get rid of the second-in-command of the Imperial Horse Directorate. However, Mao Mu really didn't have any more money. Qian Songbao naturally wouldn't believe such words. But because Jining was still waiting for his news, time was of the essence. He decided that after dealing with the matter at hand, he would properly interrogate Mao Mu. He wasn't someone who could be beaten with just 200 taels of silver. Chapter 150. Mao Mu followed Qian Songbao out of the palace and saw Qian Tong, who had already gathered 200 embroidered uniform guards. When Mao Mu's gaze met Tang Tong's, there was a look of sympathy in his eyes. They were all Wang Zhan's subordinates, and even Mao Mu had always been seen as one of Wang Zhan's trusted aides. His interaction with Yang Qindong was also because of Wang Zhan's instructions. Other than Wang Zhan, no one else knew Mao Mu's true identity. Let's go. He did not care about the change in Mao Mu and Tang Tong's attitudes. Perhaps in Qian Sengbao's eyes, becoming the head eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate was what he needed to care about. Under Qian Sengbao's lead, the group of people left the capital and headed toward the Yang Manor 15 li south of the city. In the Yang Manor, there were already spies from the Bureau of Security who had brought back the news. When they found out that a large group of embroidered uniform guards was coming out of the city, the atmosphere in the manor immediately became tense. This result was within the expectations of Yang Si, Yang Lu, and the others. After killing Zhao Xian, they had been waiting, but they did not expect it to take so long. Since they had been waiting for a long time, there was not the slightest bit of panic. Dao Shao led the second guard to hide outside the manor. Bai Zhou led the Ghost Shadow Sniper Squad to find a suitable place to hide. Yang Lu took Yang Si's place and opened the door to face the enemy. Yang Si was still dissatisfied with this. However, last time, he had single-handedly defeated the embroidered uniform guards with a single shot. This time, it was not good for him to snatch the credit. An hour later, a group of embroidered uniform guards wearing flying fish robes arrived at the entrance of the Yang Manor. When the group led by Qian Songbao arrived, they saw Yang Lu standing 100 steps away from them. He held a pitch-black firearm that they had never seen before and looked at them leisurely. In his eyes, there was a hint of disdain mixed within. This scene caused Qian Songbao to be unable to vent his anger. It must be said that the embroidered uniform guards carried out many missions, but no matter where they went, and no matter what kind of status the other party had, who wouldn't tremble in fear and tremble when they saw them? This was the first time the Yang Manor had ignored them like this since the Great Ming was established. Based on this feeling of disregard, the people of the Yang Manor deserved to die. Qian Sengbao's eyes were filled with anger. He wanted to raise his hand and order the army to suppress them. However, when he thought about the mission Jining had given him, which was to obtain the advanced firearms in one piece, he could only suppress his impulse. He looked at Tang Tong and said, "You go. Go." Qian Sengbao's eyes' face. You. We're. We. You. Is. Us here. We. And Sengbao. And. Mu was manner. Was. Ufs was. S. What crime did he commit? Yang Lu was ready to kill. He did not expect the other party to not attack immediately. Instead, he acted as if he was trying to reason with him. At the same time, he was a little disappointed. Naturally, he wouldn't give them a good face. When the matter involved Yang Si, he directly retorted, expressing his strong side. He hit the Walla's envoy and hurt both our countries, Qian Songbao said. Tang Tong was still talking about the mistakes the other party had made. However, after a few sentences, he felt that something was wrong. The Walla and the Great Ming were like fire and water. Hitting the Walla's envoy was not a crime. Instead, it should be considered to have won glory for the country. Qian Songbao could not continue. Yang Lu laughed and said, "What's wrong? You can't continue? The Walla is a villain. While paying tribute to our Ming dynasty, he actually dared to take the initiative to start a war. This kind of opponent should be beaten up. Not to mention that Yangtze brothers are not here. Even if they were, they should have done something meritorious and not wrong. This? Qian Sungbao rolled his eyes and said, meritorious or not, we have to bring it back and let the higher-ups decide. How about this? Brother, please step aside and allow us to find Yangtze and bring him back first. We will definitely give you an explanation. How about that? Without an excuse, Qian Sungbao could not believe that Tang Tong still insisted on entering the manor. Everyone knew about Sima Zhao's personality. Needless to say, Yang Lu shrugged and spread his hands to show his refusal. You go. Qian Sungbao, who was behind, saw Qian Sengbao's clumsy expression. He was naturally very angry that he had messed up the matter. He pointed at Mao Mu and instructed him to persuade Yang Lu. Mao Mu, of course, did not want to go. No matter what, Yang Chendong had done him a favor. Now that he was no longer around, he was unwilling to be a villain. However, this was not Qian Sengbao's idea. It was Jin Ying's idea. An arm could not win against a thigh. He had no other choice. Mao Mu reluctantly walked out from the crowd. His face was ashen as he walked to Tang Tong's side. As soon as Mao Mu appeared, Yang Lu's eyes were filled with suspicion. He stared into Mao Mu's eyes. Outsiders did not know about the relationship between Mao Mu and the sixth young master, but as a servant of the Yang family, he was very clear. Before the sixth young master left, he had instructed the security bureau to pay attention to Mao Mu's performance. At the same time, this was also a test. If Mao Mu could pass this test, he would definitely be put in an important position. On the other hand, if Mao Mu was a traitor, they would not mind getting rid of him and replacing him with someone else. Sensing Yang Lu's questioning gaze, Mao Mu hurriedly lowered his head. We're here to look for Yangtze. If he's here, then hand him over. If you insist on not handing him over, then I'm afraid we'll force our way into the manor. Let me ask you, can you stop 200 of us by yourself? Mao Mu's words were interrogative. However, if one listened carefully, it was as if he was telling Yang Lu that they would definitely enter the manor for an inspection today. Yang Lu should quickly think of a countermeasure. When Yang Lu heard Mao Mu's words, his expression was no longer as fierce as before. Since Mao Mu still had the heart to side with the Yang family manor, it would naturally not be good for him to target him. He immediately rushed towards Qian Sengbao, who was in the midst of the embroidered uniform guards, and said, I will stand right here. Unless there is an imperial edict from Emperor Ingzong, no one is to take a step into the manor for no reason. If anyone dares to do so, then I'm sorry, but the weapon in my hand is not something to be jealous of. As if to intimidate, Yangtze raised his hand and fired the 95 style. His action was exactly the same as when Yangtze had blocked Zhao Xian. Bah! The moment the gunshot rang out, the embroidered uniform guards in front of him became chaotic. Qian Sungbao, who was hiding in the crowd, felt his eyes light up. After receiving the mission, he knew that the biggest goal of this trip was this advanced firearm. Now that it was in front of him and he had seen it with his own eyes, he was very excited. However, at the same time, he was somewhat nervous. The three injured, embroidered uniform guards flashed in front of him. Qian Sungbao, who did not know how many times this firearm could be fired, would not take the initiative to take the risk. On the contrary, he valued his own life very much. It was because of this that he had already made preparations for this trip. He waved his large hand behind him, and a group of 50 embroidered uniform guards holding fire barrels, also known as fire barrels, appeared. They held primitive bronze fire barrels in their hands, and they appeared at the front of the group. This type of fire barrel was lighter and more agile than the earliest firearms. The barrel was slender and the front was cylindrical, and it could be used to store bullets. The medicine room was bulged in the shape of a ball, and there was a fire door on the wall for a fuse to ignite the fire. The tail end was hollow, and there was a wooden handle, making it easy for the shooter to control. Torches were quickly lit, and 50 embroidered uniform guards held torches and looked forward, as if they were ready to light the fire barrels at any time. The sudden hostility caused the atmosphere to drop to a freezing point. Mao Mu and Tang Tong, who were standing in the middle of the field, were so scared that they fell to the ground. They did not know the power of the firearm in Yang Lu's hands, but they had seen the power of the fire barrels in the hands of the embroidered uniform guards behind them. If the guns were fired randomly, there was no telling where the target would be. If they still dared to stand in the middle, they would undoubtedly become living targets. Whether the two of them were afraid of death or of being accidentally injured, they simply lay on the ground. In comparison, Yang Lu stood there with the 9-5 style as if nothing had happened. He didn't show the slightest bit of fear because of the appearance of these fire cylinders. On the contrary, his eyes were full of radiance. It was as if he wanted to experience the power of these cylinders. Qian Sangbao saw Yang Lu's behavior and was naturally very dissatisfied. He actually could not scare the other party. It seemed that simple intimidation had lost its meaning. He had to be serious. He thought that as long as he could kill Yang Lu from a distance, he would be able to obtain the advanced firearm. Then, the mission that Jining gave him would be considered completed. He immediately shouted, "Everyone, listen up. The target is straight ahead. If anyone resists, kill without mercy." The reason why he had to go first instead of shooting first was obviously because the power of the flamethrower couldn't reach that far. He wanted to shorten the distance between them. As long as he reached the effective range, he wouldn't hold back. It was because he knew the effective range of the fire barrels that Yang Lu was so fearless. Now that he saw the other party's troops moving forward, he raised his gun and let out a deafening gunshot. "Stop where you are. Otherwise, I will shoot whoever dares to move forward." His voice was loud and clear, firm and powerful. It represented Yang Lu's current mood. However, the embroidered uniform guards didn't really stop. Qian Sangbao had given a strict order and was supervising the battle from the rear. If any of them dared to stop at this moment, they would be punished by military law. Before they saw the power of the new firearm, who would dare to stop? Chapter 151. The embroidered uniform guards did not stop because of Yang Lu's words. They continued to walk forward in a straight line. From their point of view, there was no reason for them to lose when 200 people fought one person. However, they did not know that this scene was exactly what Yang Lu wanted. He was really worried that if he shouted a few words, he would scare them. If that happened, he would not be able to use his skills. Now that these people were not afraid of death, it was exactly what he wanted. He also had a chance to show off. His shout spread out. Seeing that the embroidered uniform guards did not move, Yang Lu smiled. He raised the 95 style in his hand and aimed it at the embroidered uniform guards at the front. He then adjusted his breathing and his right index finger gently pulled the trigger. He began to fire one by one. In Yang Lu's eyes, the embroidered uniform guards who were lined up with fire barrels were like fixed targets. As long as he wanted to, he could easily take the life of any one of them. However, these people were not enemies, nor were they like the fugitives that Zhao Xian had brought. They were only soldiers who had received orders. They were not enemies who would not rest until one of them was dead. He did not need to kill them. He only needed to injure them and make them suffer heavy injuries to break their fighting spirit. Yang Lu moved the muzzle of the gun slightly, from the original position of the forehead to the legs. His index finger moved slightly and he fired the first shot. Bang! The second shot rang out. The spinning bullet flew forward and whistled through the air. It directly drilled into the right leg of an embroidered uniform guard. The bullet entered the flesh and brought about a huge impact. The moment it came into contact with the blood, there was a splash of blood. Next, a figure fell to the ground. Along with him was the green fire barrel that was originally in his hand. Bang, bang, bang. All of this was just the beginning. Following Yang Lu's continuous movements of his index finger, the embroidered uniform guards in the front row fell to the ground one after another. The extremely fast speed and accurate hit rate caused the embroidered uniform guards in the front row to become a complete mess. There was no one who wasn't afraid of death, especially when they knew that they were going to die. Even the embroidered uniform guards' morale began to waver. Some directly ran back, some took the initiative to lie down on the ground, and some had already lit their barrels and poured out the gunpowder. As for whether they could hurt Yang Lu or not, they no longer cared. 7 shots were fired, and after taking down 7 armed embroidered uniform guards, the entire formation fell into chaos. Qian Sangbao, who was sandwiched in the crowd, was also completely frightened by this scene. The scene of Yang Lu shooting at the embroidered uniform guards flashed in his mind. From this, he concluded that the other party's firearms were indeed very advanced. Once Jining obtained them, who in the world would be a match for him? If he could hold such a powerful weapon in his hands, whether he gave it to Jining or kept it for himself, it would become the most powerful weapon he could use to intimidate others. Overjoyed, he ignored the chaos in the formation and shouted to the front, "Let's go! Let's go together! What are you afraid of? No matter how powerful he is, he can't kill all of us. Whoever rushes to the front and takes the firearm will be rewarded with 1,000 taels of silver and a promotion of 3 ranks." In order to achieve his goal, Qian Sangbao made a heavy promise. With a heavy reward, there were bound to be brave men. With this shout, many of the embroidered uniform guards who had been running back stopped in their tracks. Thinking of how to make a name for themselves, some of them made a fierce sound, turned around, and ran in Yang Lu's direction. The sudden change was noticed by Yang Lu. Naturally, he wasn't afraid of 8 or 10 people with one gun, but with so many of them charging at him together, he probably wouldn't even have the time to reload his gun. Originally, he wanted to be like Yang Si and fight the enemies alone, but now it seemed that he had underestimated the willpower of these embroidered uniform guards. He couldn't help but start to retreat. At the same time, he made a gesture with his right hand behind his back, telling the Ghost Shadow Sniper team, hidden inside the Yang village, to prepare to attack. Charge! Seeing that Yang Lu had started to retreat, the embroidered uniform guards couldn't help but be overjoyed. They seemed to have seen the light, saw the hope, and also saw that promotion and wealth were right in front of them. In the Yang village, Baizhua and the other 21 people were lying on the roof, each looking for the best angle to shoot. They were just waiting for the embroidered uniform guards to run into their shooting range to kill them. As the embroidered uniform guards approached step by step, the atmosphere became very tense. A big battle could break out at any time. Once the Ghost Shadow Sniper team attacked, the scene would be filled with corpses. It would also mean that the Yang village and the Great Ming dynasty had completely broken off. At this moment, everyone's hearts were thumping. They were nervous and excited. Bam, bam, bam! Just when the embroidered uniform guards were 200 steps away from the Yang village, and Baizhua was about to give the order to shoot, a series of intense gunshots suddenly rang out from behind them. This sudden gunshot also shocked the Ghost Shadow Sniper team, who were ready to shoot. Captain Baizhua didn't understand. They had agreed to attack first, and Dao Shao and the second guard would finish them off. Why did they attack first? Captain, are we going to attack? One of the Ghost Shadow Sniper team members couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart and quietly asked Baizhua, "Wait a minute, don't shoot first." Baizhua looked at the Yang village's main gate in confusion. Then, he took out his high-powered binoculars. When he looked at it, his expression became very excited. "Tell everyone, don't shoot without orders. The 6th young master is back." Yang Qindong was indeed back. He led more than 30 people and rushed over. 1 man and 2 horses didn't stop to rest. Finally, they arrived at the Yang village at the last moment. When he saw a large group of embroidered uniform guards rushing into the village, he didn't say anything and gave the order to shoot. Yang Qindong viewed the Yang village as very important. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left Zhu Qijin in such a hurry and rushed back first. He definitely wouldn't allow anyone to threaten the safety of his village and the lives of the people in the village. After Yang Qindong gave the order, the 30 people following him naturally wouldn't be polite. They raised their guns and roared. The unprepared, embroidered uniform guards behind them quickly fell. This also scared Qian Sangbao, who was in the crowd. He didn't understand where these people came from and how they actually dared to attack the embroidered uniform guards. Did they still have the law in their eyes? When he looked back with a puzzled heart, he saw a group of Ming Dynasty soldiers wearing Mandarin duck battle jackets. The people who came were actually Ming Dynasty soldiers, which made Qian Sengbao even more surprised. Since when did ordinary soldiers have the guts to attack the embroidered uniform guards? Moreover, where did those advanced firearms in their hands come from? In order to find out the reason, he ordered all the embroidered uniform guards to stop moving. He brought a few of his trusted subordinates and walked towards Yang Qindong at the back. At this time, Yang Qindong also gave the order to stop shooting. He wanted to see who couldn't help but attack the Yang village after he left. Of course, no matter who it was, he would make them pay the price in blood. As Qian Sengbao strode over, he naturally saw Yang Qindong in the crowd. Although he was dressed differently from his usual azure robes, who in the capital didn't know of the Dong Shui? Yang Qindong? It's actually you? Impudent! Who are you? How dare you call my family's name directly? Tiger's Mane, who was riding on a horse, had a cold look in his eyes. The muzzle of the pistol on his wrist was naturally pointed at Qian Sengbao's chest. Haha, you're just an insignificant fifth-rank official. You really don't enter this eunuch's eyes. My family's Qian Sengbao is the supervising eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate. Qian Sengbao reported his name amidst the laughter. According to his calculations, Yang Qindong would definitely dismount and greet him after he reported his name. After all, the group of eunuchs in the Ming dynasty always had great power, especially since he was one of the famous eunuch leaders. Naturally, the other party would cater to him. However, Qian Sengbao was destined to be disappointed. After he introduced himself, Yang Qindong acted as if he didn't hear him. On the contrary, he stared at him with a sharp gaze and asked, "This uncle is asking you, why did you step into the Yang family village to commit murder? This uncle? Aren't you the crown prince's horse protector?" Qian Sengbao was shocked by Yang Qindong's identity and asked with a puzzled expression, "This uncle is asking you why you came to the Yang family village to commit murder. Don't you understand human language?" Yang Qindong didn't have the slightest intention of answering. When he saw that the other party wasn't answering his question, he raised his right hand and fired a shot. It hit Qian Sengbao right below his right leg, causing him to kneel on the ground with a plop. No one would have thought that Yang Qindong would make a move just like that. He was still asking questions. The other side had already fired a shot and hit Qian Sengbao right below his right leg, causing him to kneel on the ground. If one looked carefully, it wasn't difficult to see that the direction he was kneeling in was where Yang Qindong was. Clang! When their master was humiliated, a few of Qian Sengbao's personal embroidered uniform guards immediately pulled out their embroidered spring swords. They looked like they were eager to rush up at any time. However, before they could do anything, Qiu Vi and the other guards had already raised the 95 style. Under the continuous firing of their guns, the few fierce-looking embroidered uniform guards all fell to the ground. Everyone was shot in the forehead and couldn't be more dead. Compared to Yang Qindong's previous warning, Yang Qindong didn't have any intention of leaving anyone alive. After a few gunshots, no one around Qian Sengbao was able to stand. This scene also frightened the supervising eunuch. He endured the pain from his leg and said repeatedly, "Spare my life, Dong Shui, spare my life. I came to the Yang family village under the orders of eunuch Jining." Jining? He, that outdated old eunuch? Hearing that he came under the orders of Jining, Yang Qindong's eyes flashed with anger. After knowing the culprit, he lost interest in continuing to talk with Qian Sengbao. After shaking his head casually, the considerate Tiger's Mane on the side casually shot Qian Sengbao. Chapter 152. After the gunshot, Qian Sengbao's eyes widened and he fell to the ground with an unwilling expression. Even as he died, his eyes were still wide open. He clearly couldn't believe that Yang Qindong would be so bold. Not only did he kill the embroidered uniform guards, he also killed the chief eunuch. Was he not afraid of the bright king's law? With Qian Sengbao dead, the other embroidered uniform guards looked at Yang Qindong with a strange gaze. At this moment, almost everyone was in a daze. They really didn't know if this person would be so bold as to kill them in the next breath. After all, he had already killed so many people, it didn't seem to matter if he killed a few more people. Under the protection of more than 30 guards and Lung Feng, Yang Chendong rode past the embroidered uniform guards who were kneeling on the ground in fear. He saw Tang Tong, who was also kneeling on the ground and trembling, as well as Mao Mu, whose eyes were filled with surprise. Watch these people. Without this uncle's orders, don't let a single one escape. Also, take care of these corpses. Eunuch Mao and Captain Tang, follow me into the manor, Yang Chendong said in a low voice, then turned and walked into the manor. At the entrance of the manor, Yang Lu was already kneeling on the ground respectfully. In the whole world, only the sixth young master could make him kneel so willingly. Get up. You've worked hard. When he passed by Yang Lu, Yang Chendong's voice became much more amiable. It was this "you've worked hard" that made Yang Lu have the urge to cry. However, he instinctively held back his tears and said, "To be loyal to the sixth young master is a subordinate's duty and obligation." Very good. Yang Chendong nodded lightly. He leaped past Yang Lu and headed straight for the entrance of the Yang Manor. Here he saw Chao Yin, Madame Shui, and Madame Xiang. Of course, he also saw seventh sister Yang Duo and Hu Yen. Young master. When they saw Yang Chendong appear safe and sound, Chao Yin and the others immediately burst into tears. From the looks of it, they seemed to have endless things to say. Don't cry. Young master, didn't I come back safe and sound? I have some matters to attend to. After I'm done, I'll have a long chat with you, Yang Chendong said to the girls with a happy expression. When his gaze fell on Hu Yen, he nodded lightly. Under their gazes, Hu Yen was immediately embarrassed. She had a feeling that her actions this time would definitely be accepted by Yang Chendong, and even her entire person would be accepted by him. Tang Tong and Mao Mu didn't even dare to raise their heads as they followed Yang Chendong into the Yang Manor. Just now, Qian Sengbao was killed without saying a word. They really didn't know if they would be killed because of their inappropriate actions next. Perhaps from Yang Chendong's performance just now, the two of them had already crowned this Dong Shuai with the title of daring to the extreme. If it was possible, they could even say that he was rebelling. In the side hall, Yang Chendong sat down. Tiger's Mane stood on his left, and Beta Persei stood on his right to ensure his absolute safety. Chao Yin still played the role of a personal maid. After taking the initiative to serve tea, she left. Needless to say, Yang Chendong was indeed a little thirsty after rushing all the way here. He didn't care about his image and drank the tea in one gulp. Then, his gaze fell on Tang Tong and asked, "Tell me what's going on?" "Dong Shuai, I'm innocent. I'm just following orders. I don't have the slightest intention of becoming enemies with the Yang clan." Tang Tong, who was called out, knelt on the ground with a plop. Could be seen that he was extremely afraid now. His original backer, Wang Zhen, had fallen. Now he had become a fish on the chopping board. Since Yang Chendong killed Qian Sengbao without batting an eye, what was he to him? There was probably no difference between killing him and killing a chicken. He knew that Tang Tong, a Qianhu official, didn't have much ability and didn't dare to have any ideas about the Yang clan. Thus, he ignored him and looked at Mao Mu. "Tell me, how has the current situation changed?" After seeing Yang Chendong kill Qian Sengbao with his own eyes, it would be a lie to say that Mao Mu wasn't afraid. In the past, he chose to rely on Yang Chendong because he liked his ability to make money and wanted to hitch a ride. Facts proved that his choice was right. He was promoted several times and became one of the eunuchs in charge of the ceremony directorate. Although he was ranked last and didn't have any real power, he was still one of the chief eunuchs. When he first heard the news that the emperor and all the officials had died on the battlefield, Mao Mu sighed that his life was not good. It wasn't easy to find a wise emperor, but he died in a few days. He became a person without anyone to rely on. This time, when he saw Yang Chendong come back, it would be a lie to say that he wasn't excited. But this excitement was completely frightened after seeing Qian Sengbao killed with his own eyes. In his eyes, Yang Chendong's actions were no different from a rebellion. If he got close to him, wouldn't he also indirectly walk on a road of no return? He was truly afraid and had many thoughts. Facing Yang Qindong's question, he didn't know how to answer. He just copied Tang Tong and knelt on the ground, trembling all over. He couldn't even let out a fart for a long time. Gently shaking his head, Yang Qindong saw Mao Mu's expression. He could guess what the other party was thinking. He took out a secret letter and handed it to Mao Mu. Take a look. What is this? With your status, you should be able to recognize whose handwriting this is. A letter was handed to him. Mao Mu curiously reached out to take it. When he slowly opened it and saw the handwriting and content, his original nervousness turned into excitement and then joy. He immediately kowtowed heavily to the ground. This little one greets Uncle Zhongdan. Greets Uncle Zhongdan. When Yang Qindong saw this scene, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It seemed that there were still many things that he needed to do. Even Mao Mu, who had a close relationship with him and had even recognized him as his master, believed in imperial power so much. If he really declared himself king, there probably wouldn't be many people in the world who would sincerely respond to him. Even if he relied on advanced weapons to become king, it was a situation that was formed under pressure. It wasn't a situation that he sincerely submitted to. While Yang Qindong was still sighing, Tang Tong, who was kneeling on the ground at the same time, had a strange look in his eyes. He didn't understand why eunuch Mao had such a huge change. As if sensing Tang Tong's confusion, Mao Mu handed the letter to him and said, "Take a look. This is a reward from the emperor. It is definitely written by Ingzong." After receiving the letter, Tang Tong looked over and quickly kowtowed to the ground. At the same time, he shouted, "This official greets Uncle Zhongdan. Greets Uncle Zhongdan. Okay, both of you get up. Now, you can clearly explain the situation in the court to this uncle." After revealing his trump card, Yang Qindong had won the trust of the two. With Zhu Qizhen's personal handwriting, Mao Mu naturally didn't have any psychological burdens and began to speak of everything he knew. Occasionally, Tang Tong would add a few words. As he listened to the two, Yang Qindong's expression turned grave, and he couldn't help but sigh at the power of the wheel of history. Although he had saved Zhu Qizhen, this did not change the fact that the Mastiff King had become Daizong. Moreover, without Yu Qian, the court was completely under eunuch Jin Ying's control. Yang Qindong also had no good impression of Jin Ying. This eunuch was essentially jackals of the same tribe as Wang Zhen, and he was also not a good person. With him here, Daizong would probably find it very difficult to become a wise sovereign. It took an hour for Mao Mu and Tang Tong to give a rough account of the situation in the capital, but even this was not complete. Fortunately, Yang Qindong had already understood and had a general understanding of the situation. Okay, this uncle already knows the situation. I presume that you've already guessed that Ingzong is fine and is currently heading to the capital under the protection of soldiers. This uncle is merely a vanguard official. Now comes the problem. The great Ming now has two emperors. How will you choose? As Yang Qindong spoke, he turned his deep eyes to Mao Mu and Tang Tong, intending to force them to state their stance. He had even made up his mind. It would be fine if these two were willing to swear loyalty to Zhu Qizhen, but if they weren't, he would kill them both. Until he had infiltrated the palace and met with Empress Qin, his return could not be exposed. Sensing the pressure in Yang Qindong's eyes, Mao Mu made his choice without the slightest hesitation. This lowly one is a eunuch appointed by Ingzong and naturally must swear loyalty to him. Yes, this lowly one is also loyal to Ingzong. This time, Tang Tong reacted quickly and made his choice right behind Mao Mu. Okay. This answer was within Yang Qindong's expectations. They had all been glorious figures of Ingzong's era, but now that Daizong had been replaced, Jining viewed them as dissidents, and they were on the verge of being eliminated. It had always been easy to choose where to go. Since all of you have chosen Ingzong like this uncle, it is time for us to repay His Imperial Majesty's kindness. Mao Mu, immediately arrange for me to enter the palace and meet with Empress Qin. Remember, only you can know of this matter. As for how much silver it will cost, I will prepare it for you in a little while. Tang Tong immediately get in touch with those embroidered uniform guard leaders. This emperor is also the commander of the embroidered uniform guard. As long as they join me, their past mistakes can be forgiven. Of course, Yang Chendong would also choose to work for Ingzong Zhu Qizhen. This was not about who he wanted to swear loyalty to, but in the current situation, Ingzong was clearly at a disadvantage. He had to help him gain a foothold. In his opinion, whether it was Ingzong Zhu Qizhen or Daizong Zhu Qiyu as the emperor, they could not be too strong. It would be best if the two emperors worked together. This way, he would be able to benefit from both sides. Now that Ingzong was at a disadvantage, he naturally had to help him. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.